throughout the night that hung over the treetops of the Shodai's gift to his gracious village. Silence draped itself over the shinobi village of Konoha, the hidden leaf village, where moonlight glinted off of the freshly washed and dampened stone faces of its fallen Kage, starlight glinting in their eyes, and their stony gaze locked on the world below. Their village and their precious people, defended long after their passing. Yet they, too, were blind and unseeing to the blur of orange that fled the tower below, a scroll strapped to his back and panic clear in his eyes. Curses no boy of this youth's age should know spilling from his lips as he fled across rooftops and treetops towards the edge of Konoha's eastern wall. This boy, as many who know the story would have guessed, was Naruto Uzumaki. Having failed his shinobi exam that very morning, Naruto had acted out of desperation, out of fear and worry for his future as a ward for the village, and out of need to continue to follow his dream, acting on an offer presented to him by a trusted mentor. That trust meant fuck all to the boy right now. Dumb as he was, Naruto knew three things right now. One, he had caused harm to one of the only adults in the village who showed any care to him through the act of his embarrassing jutsu. Two, he had in doing so accidentally caused a loud crash from the old man's comically large nosebleed, sending said elder into a bookcase. And three, the umbu that had rushed into the room at the sound had seen him fleeing with the scroll on his back, and instead of calmly chasing after him as he thought they would as part of this extracurricular test, they had thrown all manner of weapons at him. Blood dripped down from a gash on his left arm, a shuriken embedded into the arm below the elbow as it dangled. And that damned word, traitor, said with such ease that all the boy could wonder is what he had done wrong. He had listened to his mentor, done as was asked. He was only performing a test, was he not? Then why was he branded a traitor on sight and attacked with what he could recognize as near lethal force to incapacitate, if not kill outright for a failed academy student such as him? The boy's thoughts halted as he spotted them, those black robes and white masks. There, a glint of moonlight in the air as his warning, barely enough time to duck before the blade shot overhead, shaving a few of his blonde hairs from his head. He barely registered the sting as the blade also slit skin, instead focusing as his panic caused him to blunder and fall from the rooftops above. A sickening crack coming from his shoulder upon the panicked and failed landing with the weight of the scroll throwing off his already atrocious balance. A quick glance at the awkwardly bent limb told him enough. His good hand reaching to yank the shuriken from its place in his flesh with the scroll's rope strap acting as the brace to muffle his cry of pain. The umbu from before leapt to the rooftops above, looking down upon his hiding space as he slipped into an empty bin, his breath held, body still as two pairs of feet landed on the floor near him, gazing through a rusted hole in the side. Did you see where he went? The blank mask, something he had not seen before with the old man's guards, turned to his partner, another mask as blank as snow shaking in silent negative. With a nod of the affirmative, the first leapt up to the rooftops once more, springing from windowsill to ledge in a silent act of shinobi acrobatics, while the second stood as still as the wind, blank featureless mask scanning the surroundings as he lowered his hand to the discarded shuriken. Naruto felt his breath hitch. Not an Inuzuka. He prayed, a prayer answered when the man wiped the blood off of the weapon and pocketed it, soon taking off into the nearby alleyways. The breath the blonde held released itself slowly, only to hitch at the smell surrounding him. Naruto could not have leapt from the bin fast enough, covering his mouth to hide his gags and his heaving, ignoring the steaming wound on his arm close up. His healing was nothing special to him anymore, and besides, there were more important things occurring to him. Traitor Umbu. It was too much. The boy had to hide, to do anything. Mizuki could not be trusted anymore with this farce of a scheme exposed to the boy, but they were obviously after the scroll. Not him. So why not just leave it where he was? Simple. The boy was too scared to even consider that an option. So instead, he ran, wasting no time in using his good arm to lift up a manhole cover nearby to his hiding spot. He tore off what remained of his ruined sleeve and tied it around his face before diving in. The darkness mattered little to him, eyes adjusting quickly as the smell of waste and sewage surrounded him. Thoughts too aswim with the events of that day to consider the smell. The ambient sound of alarms awakening the village above could be heard, pulling his heart deeper into the depths of dread as his crime, officially began the manhunt for him and the scroll in his possession. Naruto Uzumaki was now a wanted man. And like any wanted man in Konoha, his thoughts went to the simplest and also the most difficult solution: escape. All sewage in Konoha went to a nearby lake that was then washed to either the treatment plants or the outer areas of the Land of Fire. So he ran as fast as he could through the stone tunnels of the sewers beneath his home, now his hunting grounds, with escape on the mind. To follow the water was to find an exit. To follow the waste was to find his freedom, and even then, that seemingly would be blocked off as he heard them. Heard it, barking. Inuzuka and Nin hounds were on the hunt, and even through the pungent and potent smell of shit, piss, and God knows what else, the smell of blood was ever stronger. As he ran, he heard them, paw upon stone and claws scratching up the path he had come down. Stealth thrown to the shit-scented wind, the blonde continued to run. Why couldn't he just stop? Why couldn't he explain what had happened? The thoughts swam around in his mind, and yet he couldn't. They were getting closer, his heart racing, tears of panic pouring down his cheeks as the world fell apart around him. His world fell apart around him. One stupid decision had taken it all from him. As lights passed and the sound of manhole covers being kicked and filled the tunnels around him, hope seemingly dwindled off, only to be cut off as a woman in Konoha Jounin clothing, one he had seen come to pick up Kibo once or twice in the past, came dashing around the corner. He barely managed to slide, using his smaller stature to do so, as her claws lacerated the area beneath his left eye in a bid to grab the boy. The snap of jaws against his leg from her companion halted his escape, causing him to cry out in pain as he felt the sharpened, chakra-reinforced ivories crunch down on flesh and bone. The pain that came from his healing trying to close up around the ninhound's fangs was quickly dwarfed by the feeling of a clawed hand smashing his face down onto the damp concrete. Got you, you little shit. The woman's voice dripped with satisfaction as he felt her knee press down on his broken shoulder, crying out in pain that echoed through the tunnels. The barking got louder, and cries of "over there" soon followed as the other trackers began to converge on his location. the crackle of a radio coming from above him. "This is Tokabetsu Jounin, Sum Inazuka. I have the traitor in custody." Anything the woman could have said after that was drowned out by the ringing in the boy's ears. The pain of her knee against his arm was blinding to him. The sting of the jaws still clamped around his healing leg, only adding to the feeling. Naruto's eyes widened in pain as she took his broken arm and yanked it behind him, cold metal clamping down on its wrist, and his other arm was soon to follow as he was dragged up to his knees on the hard, damp, and cold concrete. He could see naught but shadows as other groups soon caught up, lights shining in his eyes from their flashlights. That was when the screaming started. Unkon's POV. The creature did not know its name. It did not know its face, its age. It did not know it at all anymore. No, it had been years since it had been allowed to think on what it was. Failure was what it knew what it was. Yes, failure. Name was failure as far as the creature is concerned. It was what the pale-face yellow gaze had called it with what hurt so much on its shoulder. Long had it been since the man had come to see it, the man which held the keys to its cell. Yes, cell. The bars that had long since bent and rusted to its banging on them. Snappy snap they did, clanging on stone floor. The bottles and flames the man had used had long since been taken with him when the weird man in white came to see where the creature had stayed silent and hid to prevent its death. Ratties had been its nourishment since that day. Creature was calm and happy in the dark of the tunnels around it, ever since it was taken from Mama and Papa in the above ground. No, think of the above. Man said it could not return. Failure would be killed for what it was. So ratties and ratty blood was its nourishment down here in the dark, and it liked it that way. No more sharp ouchies and no more burning needles in its skin. Calm. Happy calm. Screaming. Sound in its home. Lots of sounds in its home. The creature did not like that. It did not like that at all. Its black, lifeless eyes staring from the corner was into the darkness beyond its corner of home. Screams. Then that smell. Blood, tasty blood, yummy blood, much better than ratty blood. It smelt so rich, so potent, so pain flaring up on its shoulder as the black markings came back again. Its voice filled the air, a screech of something unknown to the world reverberating from the soundproofed walls its home had laid in as its clawed fists reared up and slammed against brick wall, and again, and again, and again. It slammed as its pain flared up with hunger and kind, cracks forming in the wall between it and its prey. When the wall gave through, the creature was free to see what the smell was. A young boy, surrounded by men and women in green clothing as they turned to him, glinty sharpies drawn and it burned. The light, it burned. It burned, it burned, it burned. The creature's scream filled the tunnel as they all saw it for what it was. And poor Naruto's eyes saw it for who it was. A young boy he had known at the orphanage so long ago, gone missing when a strange fire had broken out in the orphanage file room. At least that's what he recognized, what had once been, if he remembered, a kind boy named Kenji who loved nothing more than to play with the birds in the orphanage flower garden, was now a monster of his worst nightmares. Skin as ashen gray as stone, untouched by sunlight, eyes beady and black with dimming fiery marks across his skin resembling that of flower petals, and claws, fingernails as long as knives, glinting with the flashlights shined on them, and those teeth needles, rows and rows of them. He felt the hand on his shoulder tighten before he was thrown back behind the woman that had caught him. Shit, it's one of the snake's freaks. Kill it. The cry for death was matched by the barking of dogs and the cries of rage from the men. Running forward to the beast, Schlick. Blood sprayed the blonde's face as his sun-kissed hair was marred red by the splatter of entrails. This creature's one hand having gutted one of the Neen hounds that attacked it. His partner crying out in rage as it drove a kunai into the creature, only for what was once Kenji to turn and crush his skull with little care of the knife embedded into it. Knife fly, fingers shredding neck from shoulders in the grasp, bringing it to those jagged teeth to crunch down upon it. Gray matter and skin splattering the ground, all in the space of a few seconds. Naruto felt true fear. The woman cursed, turning to him and glaring as she picked him up and ran. I swear, kid, if you're in league with that snake, I will gut you myself. He knew she was saving the scroll attached to him and not the boy himself. But in the moment, he was all the more ready to forgive the bite of her partner and the near destruction of his eye. But he dared to look back as the creature was lit up in flame and stabbed, bit into and more, and yet it gouged a path through them, its eyes locked on him. Fear. Sheer unrivaled terror filled the boy as it bounded down the tunnels towards him. Kenji's eyes locked on him with a hunger that no creature on two legs should possess, the chill filling his spine, doubling as it came into view of the moonlight under a vacant manhole cover, entrails hanging from claws and knives sticking out of it in all directions. It leapt. He cried out. She did not listen. Some conviction in him as a traitor cost her dearly as the creature slammed down on her back with an unearthly speed and an inhuman weight. She rolled. He rolled out of her grip, and it did not waste the moment granted. Like a beast more than a human, it rolled off of her and gripped her skull with its claws, smashing it into the concrete until blood poured from the wound it had made. Some would later come to wish it had finished her off, for perhaps she would not have to live with what came next. Naruto's broken and weak body began to crawl away, drawing the creature's ire as its prey began to escape. Oh, it could not have that. As it crawled away from the clan matriarch, dragging its claws against concrete, its eyes locked on the wound that was slowly starting to heal. Bite marks. Bite marks. Jagged finger blades shot through the boy's ankle, pinning him to the ground as tearful screams of pain filled the air, only for that scream to break even further into pain noise. Wails of sobbing as he felt those needle-like fangs bite into his shoulder, inches from his neck, blood, and the sickly ichor of this thing's saliva mixing in a blazing agony that rushed through him. Blood, so sweet. The crunch of the boy's bones and the splattering of blood was all that this creature could focus on, even as it pulled the blade that pinned Naruto to the ground out of his ankle. Unaware as veins turned black and the remnants of what it had left behind followed it, it savored its meal, only for a sharp pain to send it into darkness. In the distraction its meal had cost, the creature did not see the man in white, or the white-cloaked white mass by his side, nor the blade that shot for its head. As its body fell on Naruto's, bloods mixing together and soaking the scroll that the boy still had slung over his back, the blonde's last thoughts laid upon the man before him. The man he looked up to, the man he betrayed, The man Ye Hiruzen Surtobi, third fire shadow of his village, stared in horror as one of his wayward students' creations lay a corpse on top of the boy he had come to collect. In disgust and rage at the bodies this thing had left behind, and the wounds it had caused, in worry at the clan head with a cracked skull and heavily bleeding wounds. His voice carried far, worry for his grandson, and allies filling the air. Medic. Location: Konoha General Hospital, Prisoners Ward. The previous 12 hours had been, for lack of a better word that the man could find, a total and complete nightmare for the third Hokage. Hiruzen Surtobi, for all his strengths and jutsu, years as the god of shinobi, had never felt as weak or as helpless as he did right now, staring at the medical reports of the only 2 surviving members of the horrifying events earlier that evening that were in need of medical attention. Those that could be healed with a few medical jutsu had been given paid medical leave and confined to an S-class secret, as well as rewarded individually with 2 massive paydays for discovering and dealing with both the traitor of the Leaf and one of his students' ex-labs, one that he had thought to be abandoned and emptied. A foolish notion that had cost the man so much. 5 fine shinobi and their Nin hounds, their clan matriarch in critical condition with an injury that would likely keep her from ever going onto the field again for fear of seizures or worse. The scroll of secrets in a large state of damage from claw marks and bloodstains, and then the boy himself. His eyes flickered over to the blonde in the bed beside him. Such a peaceful expression that came only from the dead, yet the rising and falling of his chest spoke otherwise. The man had to wonder if he should thank or curse the fox, for living with tonight would no doubt be the true price his grandson would have to pay if given the chance to even walk again, with his arm elevated in a cast beside him, a blood pack replacing that which had been lost, and the signs and scars of emergency surgery. The boy was more bandaged than skin at the current point in time. He knew the boy was no traitor, but with him unconscious from that damned transformation and bleeding from the nose, he was nowhere capable of telling his trained guard to stand down, as they did exactly what he trained them to do. He could not even punish them in truth, for they had done their duty to the letter in defending him and trying to apprehend the scroll from any and all possible threats, even one such as Naruto. As he exhaled a stress-filled breath, damning the nurse in his mind that had forbidden him from smoking in the ward, the Kage could do naught but just stare at the boy. The creature had done such horrible damage to the blonde. Veins as black as ink, pulsed with some unknown infection that refused to be drawn out even by his best medic Nin, and where the flesh had healed over due to the boy's burden was now mangled and scarred, deformed in a way, with obvious bite marks that looked closer to that of a wild beast from the forest of death, instead of something remotely humanoid. The boy's eye, bandaged with infection that had set in from the wounds Tsum had caused to him. The Kage had not the heart to acknowledge that the boy would likely lose it to the infection, if not the Kyuubi's chakra. Knocking on the door drew his attention, his aged gaze on the door as it opened without his order, and in walked the boy's favorite teacher, bloodied, injured, favoring his left leg, and remorseful, dropping a headband on the bed of the blonde, just missing the boy's good leg. What is the meaning of this Chunin Yumino? The teacher stared down at the boy, his gaze somehow getting heavier. Nothing tonight stood right with me, sir. Not Naruto's actions, not the fact he had stole from you, nor the cheerful look he had when he incapacitated you on your office's security footage. I decided to go in the same direction he would have if not driven to the sewers, and I found Chunin. I found Mizuki there, ranting and raving about a stupid brat who couldn't follow orders right. The old man nodded, already gathering the pieces as he sighed and sat back. Moments of silence passed before he reached over to turn the headband around, a gouge and blood stain marked on it. Mizuki's ID number etched from the metal. I understand, Irika. Is he Dash? In custody, sir. I apprehended the traitor after he engaged in combat with me, and he is currently in the care of Konoha's snake mistress. He has already confessed to his crimes and Naruto's true involvement. The unspoken truth of the matter lay heavy in the air as the grandfather of Konoha laid his head back against the chair he sat upon, with a gaze that spoke of only regret. Irika soon followed, blood still dripping from one leg as he sat down against the sterile floor, back against the wall. The two sat in silence for a while, only for the silence to be shattered by the clacking of a cane, a bandaged individual stepping through the door. His eyes laid upon his once best friend, and the Chunin and the boy in the room. Hiruzen, we must speak. In private. Knowing Irika needed the rest, the aged Kaga nodded before standing and leaving the room to the private hallway outside, only to be led to an empty room further down the hall by his fellow elder. When the door clicked shut behind him, Danzo was quick to turn with worry in his gaze. Another of your students' labs, Hiruzen. When are we going to stop suffering for your mistake with that madman? Of course, the worry was never for him. Oh no, the man was as cutthroat as they came, the kind of person Hiruzen needed right now. Not that he would ever truly admit it. Yes, it seemed to contain the first-generation curse seal subjects. We don't know what these things are capable of, only that what we saw down there was the last living subject. The bodies within were torn to shreds, rotting, seemingly eaten by whatever that was. The notes were bloodied, ruined. Nothing could be recovered, so I sent the cleanup squads to burn it all. Danzo nodded. He would have done the same himself after all, but his eye, heavy with thought, flickered to the door to the room they had been in seconds before, where the issue lay. And him, Hiruzen, if our weapon is infected or part of this, then we must dash. No, 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 I believe this was simply a matter of foul luck. A dive into one of the survivors' minds showed us that the creature was focused on Naruto and focused on him due to the open wounds on the boy's body. It is the current running theory that the boy's healing factor was keeping his blood far more potent than it should have been once leaving his body, causing whatever hunger that creature possessed to go out of control. The aged man's eyes also turned to gaze at the door to Naruto's room, a heavy frown marring his expression with worry and pain concern. What has me worried is his wounds are not healing. They healed over, but the infection of whatever that thing left in him is not leaving him. It's almost like his body is healing around our attempts to get rid of it. And Danzo, the old warhawk, looked on as his friend stared back, fatigue and age in his gaze. I need you to keep this quiet. For the sake of the village, we cannot let them know that our vessel is on death's door. For once, I need you to do as you were told. Whatever this infection is changing the boy on a biological level. The raised eyebrow he received in kind drew a sigh from the Kage as he motioned for Danzo to sit. Upon doing so, The boy's chakra pathways are being eaten away, and the seal has already degraded by 20%. Danzo immediately stood, eye open in shock. It was only Hiruzen's gesture that stopped the man from shouting. I locked on the hand that motioned for him to stop before staring expectantly at his Kage. Jiraiya has already assured me that the seal is repairing itself, as by Minato's design, but the damage has been done. He reckons close to 3 tails of the fox's chakra has entered into Naruto's own, and it's eaten away his tenketsu in pathways like acid to a strip of raw meat. It is currently lying dormant in his muscular structure and brain, and is seemingly the reason the infection has not died out and has not progressed, both fueling it with cells to consume while keeping it back with walls of those cells. We do not know what this is going to lead to, so the boy will be kept in a medicinal coma until we believe he could be awakened safely. Any further words from the man were cut off as a scream of fear came from the room behind them, Naruto's room. And they ran, only to see the same boy they spoke about standing on his bed with his ruined body and an arm wrapped around the neck of the nurse that had been in the process of replacing his blood pack, open eye empty of emotion and tinted red with black veins, all too familiar to the two men, spreading out across his body. As the nurse struggled to breathe, a shaky Irika pulling himself out of a cracked indentation in the wall, Danzo acted quickly to subdue the boy while Hiruzen retrieved the nurse. A neck strike knocking the boy back to unconsciousness as he stared down at the blonde, watching the black veins retreat back to the mangled scar on his shoulder. The two stood in silence, Irika coming to stand beside his commander. I want this room locked down for the night. No one in, no one out, not even the nurses. Understood. No one questioned his order. For hours now, he had floated. He had watched. He had observed really. His body hurt, his screaming having given way to silence from torn vocal cords, and his eyes dry from tears shed in this void, this sewer he lay in. The water, so cold, stung at his skin and his broken body. The pains he had felt lingering only starting to fade a few minutes ago. He had been watching, gazing as the pipes above him were dissolved, eaten away as a fleshy substance began to cover them and consume them, only for the red pipes to grow too, becoming fleshy in their own rights, but more lively than this rotting necrotic flesh he saw first. He watched the two fighting and battling each other, Red standing stalwart as the rotting flesh ate and ate at it with no give and no take. And it hurt. Oh, God, it hurt. Naruto, wake up. Blue eye, the left one darkened by pain, slowly began to open as he struggled to lift his head. In doing so, he stared at the gates he had seen when entering this place. The iron bars and paper tag that had stood before were crumbled, ruined, instead replaced by a fleshy wall of tendrils and sinew, and in the center of it, that fox, 9 tails strung up as this fleshy substance ate away at it. Seemingly hanging from the fox, unconscious as it was, held asleep by the rotting tendrils that ate away at it only for parts of it to heal back moments later. In the center of the tunnel, half dissolved and held in some form of crucifixion by the flesh, yellow eyes, pale skin, and a smirking expression that spoke of madness. So, Kukuku, the boy lives after all. Do you know who I am, child? The shake of Naruto's head was slow, a groan escaping him as some of the flesh came down to lift him up and place him on his knees before the stranger, his voice seeming double-layered, strange in a way. I am your creator, your maker, my creature bestowed upon you a gift, my cursed seal, power beyond power. And this prison took me in, my soul, my chakra, and all of a nature chakra it siphoned off. Oh, this place, it reeks with the touch of death, something I have strived to avoid for all my life. And yet, look at it. It is sustaining. It is exactly what I needed. You will come to see it, boy. The power this beast command shall be OURS to command. Through my gift to you, it shall become Mine. Tendrils of flesh shot forth, stabbing into the boy as the man within the fox laughed and cackled with a mad joy. They tore at him, piercing his flesh as weak cries of pain left him, only for the laughter to stop, screams of pain to come from the madman instead as the tendrils were consumed by crimson flame, black veins spreading across the boy. A different voice, one without sound, but words all the same filling the air. One he knew came from the beast and not the man. It told him to fight, to struggle, to remove the parasite. This man sought to consume him? No, he would consume them. Engulfed in scarlet flame, claws and black veins growing from him, the boy leapt like a beast possessed into the air and down onto the hanging man. Yellow eyes widened in rage, a cry of hate-filled words going unheard by the pulsing of blood and infection-filled heartbeats pounding in the boy's ears as he brought his hands down and gouged out those yellow eyes. The tunnel shook with the man's pained and rage-filled voice, but the nails of the blonde dug deeper until they scraped the back of the parasite's skull. With black veins as ink upon the skin and a pulsing scarlet eye, the boy ripped the skull in two, leaving him to fall as the dangling remains of the man hung in halves, somehow still alive as the red flesh consumed it. Savage beast. Naruto did not care. He knew he should have, but he did not care. This parasite, the pain that disappeared as it was consumed. Neither were welcome here. He could not question how he knew such a thing, only that he did. The pain had dulled his mind to a point of no longer questioning, at least for now. As his eyes rose, meeting with the now awake and rage-filled crimson orbs of the fox above, he watched as it too was consumed into the shadows behind those fleshy bars and tendrils of sinew. He knew it would not be the last time he saw the beast, but he did not know why darkness encroached on the boy, feeling his pain return along with the feeling of a soft, warm bed. A welcome change from cold sewer water. Or so he would have thought. The pain that racked his body upon awakening was awful. Chained down to the bed he laid on, he barely had the room to grab his shoulder with a restrained hiss of pain. His body felt as if it was on fire, as if it was ablaze with his own boiling blood. Nothing felt right, and this pain was only lessened by the sudden prick to the side of his neck and the cooling sensation that followed. With a sigh, he laid back down against the bed, slowly turning his head to look at the one face he wanted to see, a weak smile on his lips. Old man, his grandfather looked on with an unmistakable look of relief at seeing the boy awake. Lone Blue, looking at him in joy at being well. Alive for one, but also not in a prison cell. The stinging of tears being shed came from the eye as he looked up at his grandfather, his bottom lip quivering slightly. I'm sorry, Gigi. and Mizuki mad dash. The gesture to stop drew his attention. The Kage taking a long drag from his pipe, nurses be damned, before exhaling a mouthful of smoke. I know Naruto-kun. I know. He's been apprehended, and you've been cleared of the crime of treason and theft. That, however, does not leave you without consequence to your actions last night. Look at your arm, Naruto. The boy's gaze turned to his arm, the one that had been bitten by that thing, only to widen as he saw it was healed, almost perfectly, and it looked stronger too. The remains of a cast around it as he slowly flexed the limb in question. The next thing he felt was a tap to his stomach, the old man tapping it with his cane. When he looked down, he saw a tattoo he had never noticed before, a spiral with 8 symmetrical lines of symbols that reminded him of the standard issue storage tags. Only the spiral looked cracked and faded with 3 tomo over it instead. That, my boy, was the seal placed upon you at birth to hold back a threat to this village by my successor, the 4th Hokage, a seal empowered by the Shinigami itself. A seal that last night cracked when your heartbeat stopped. Naruto's I shot up to look at the third with fear and shock, processing information by the mile a minute. I died. The third nodded, glad and thankful that that was the part that Naruto had latched onto. While rare, it isn't impossible, Naruto. Some shinobi experience wounds so painful or so violent that they lead to the heart stopping, like you did. That creature had dealt to you a wound so severe that you were pronounced dead on arrival to the hospital, only for it to restart itself as that seal on your stomach degraded and the being within was able to flood your body with its chakra. Chakra that your body used to heal itself at an accelerated rate. The bright grin on the boy's face was quickly diminished by the look of his grandfather staring at him. What's wrong, Gigi? Isn't this a good thing? I am alive. I can go back to the academy and become a shinobi, and what's with that look, old man? The mention of the academy had drawn a look of sadness to the aged Kage, his hand rubbing his face before he sat back on the chair behind him, playing with his pipe. The being inside you, Naruto, is the 9-tailed demon fox. Memories of his dream came to the forefront. What he thought was a fever nightmare starting to seem painfully real. It was sealed inside you as a newborn babe, as a being made of chakra cannot be truly killed or driven away as it is unending, unyielding. It can only be stopped by imprisoning in a vessel such as an urn or pot, or, in this case, with its power in a human child whose chakra coils are not fully developed and can grow to accustom the strain of the power. This child was you. The blonde laid his head back against the pillow of his bed, eye unblinking in shock. He was a vessel for the very thing that had nearly destroyed his village 13 years ago. Is that why? Why the villagers hate you? Yes, but I'm afraid that everything I have just told you is no longer true. Naruto's head turned fast enough to worry the Kage that he had snapped his neck, his loud cry of what causing the Umbu outside to look inwards with alertness. Hiruzen dismissed their worry with a wave of his hand, pulling up a piece of paper from beside him and handing it to the blonde. Read. I don't think I have the heart to tell you what it says. Tentatively taking the paper, the young Uzumaki began to scan its contents, heart dropping with every word. Name, Naruto Uzumaki. Age, 13. Rank, academy student. QB Jinchuriki Seal and Chakra Status Report, supervised by Jiraiya the Toad Sage and Hayashi Hyuga. After the events of Subject 1, Naruto Uzumaki, awakening in the midst of a medicinal coma and attacking a nurse in the middle of exchanging his blood transfusion bag. It has been requested that I, Dr. Redacted, perform an examination of the boy with overseeing superiors Jiraiya of the Toads and Lord Hyuga to examine the seal and subject's chakra system respectively, and I to examine the reaction of these changes on the boy's own health and biological makeup. And what I have come to find in doing so is something I hope the Yamanaka remove from my mind upon submitting this report. Through extensive cross-referencing of the notes left behind by Lord Fourth provided by Jiraiya at Lord Third's behest, it is my firm belief that the corrosive nature of the Nine Tails chakra left in subject Uzumaki's system has resulted in a full-scale burnout of the subject's internal chakra system and external tenketsu, as previously theorized by my coworkers. It is also my theory, however, that the foreign presence of enzymes and corrosive genetic structure of the corpse of Subject 2, now identified as one Kenji unnamed, has somehow, I hesitate to come up with a theory as to how, mixed with the blood of the boy and the foreign chakra it carried has also entered the seal. What we now know to be the curse seal that Mitarashi Anko herself is afflicted with has appeared on top of the Reaper Death seal and filled what parts of it were previously damaged in the boy's momentary death. The lock it has formed has prevented the fox's chakra from returning, and instead it has saturated and soaked the very cells of the boy, almost akin to a cancer. It does not seem to be damaging the boy, but it is causing a heavy repopulation of cells that can be called mutated. The issue comes in what the lock has instead sealed behind it. What we know now to be tainted nature chakra has flooded the seal, and it is the theory of myself and my supervisors that the act of this new seal is slowly drip-feeding the nature chakra back to Naruto, while taking it in and corrupting it from his surroundings simultaneously. While this would normally be a medical marvel, the issue comes in the fact it is tainted by the effects of the seal. Previous reports have shown that those with a mark of the snake have experienced homicidal, violent tendencies, and manic, borderline psychotic bouts of rage. With this new seal being fed by Uzumaki's own chakra, in turn drawing in tainted nature chakra, which will feed the rampant-tailed beast chakra, which will then only help sustain Naruto's body to create his own chakra. The seal has essentially formed an endless loop to which there is no way to end it without shutting off his chakra with seals, which would summarily kill him due to the lack of a network to carry and guide his chakra, something the summarily named Cursed Reaper seal entailed. Beast chakra are working together to do symbiotically. It is inevitable that the boy will soon face these bouts of rage and will come to face a choice: imprisonment until needed for war, or a life of struggle to contain these negative urges of anger, hate, lust, envy, and similar. I do not envy the boy. Even as Naruto read the paper, his hands began to shake, fear and anger in kind flooding him, before his head turned to the old man sitting beside him. Lone Blue, I now twisted and read, and to the surprise of the elder, the second's bandage burning away in the few strands of scarlet chakra to reveal a second crimson iris. One word escaping the boy's lips. Why? Why indeed? Why did he not tell the lad? Why did he hide the boy's condition? As a sacrifice, simple, He was foolish. Now the boy sat before him, dreams stolen from him, unable to cast jutsu as the young boy dreamt to do, and cursed with an affliction arguable worse than what he possessed before. The man sighed. It was at times like this that he hated this job. He stood, he turned, and he walked, drawing the boy in his shaking arms, with a sigh of regret on the air. Even as the boy shook, he just held him. I have no words of apology vast enough to explain just how sorry I am, how much I hate my own powerlessness to help you now, my boy. But I promise you this. I will not see you a weapon to be taken out at times of war. I will not see you a tool. You are Naruto Uzumaki, citizen of the Hidden Leaf. Not the fox, not a monster, but my grandson, and we will find a way out of this darkness together. The hospital shook with the sobs of a broken boy that morning. With a forgotten headband laying on the floor by their feet, as sun shone down upon road around him, Naruto took in a deep breath of clean, natural air with a small smile upon his lips. After days spent within the sterile hospital behind him, the lack of a chemical cleanliness and forced sterility was a godsend to the boy. Donned not in his usual orange clothing or his hospital gown, the boy wore a simple set of brown cargo shorts and a black shirt, letting its dark color absorb a welcome heat from the sun above. His arm was wrapped from knuckle to shoulder in bandages to hide the fact he had healed so quick, something that turned what could have been looks of disgust into ones of mild content. It was weird, knowing that deep down their reason for hating him was almost justified. Sure, he was angry. He was very angry. He stopped himself at that thought, exhaling a breath he did not know he was holding. He was upset that they felt this way towards him, but it was not something to dwell on. Not with the news he had gotten a while ago. His new curse seal thrummed with a hidden energy under his shirt, his hand going to it as he looked up and down the road. Yet, like the last seal, wasn't any less cursed. His new cursed Reaper seal, as it had come to be called, irritating with how it always had this presence for him, like it was demanding to be used or acknowledged. The feeling had even cost him a few good nights of sleep, although a quick shot of morphine from a sympathetic nurse had helped in that regard. Oh boy, did it help. The boy's thoughts were cut off as he felt a hand on his shoulder, turning to look at a strange woman whose hair reminded him much of a pineapple, and upon a small glance downwards, became his focal point from that moment forth. You the Uzumaki brat. A nod, not trusting his voice, was met with a smirk from the woman as her hand moved to his head, digging down into his scalp as she ruffled his hair. Good. That means I don't have to wait around for your sorry ass. I'm Anko Mitarashi, but you can call me Senpai, Sir, or Your Royal Highness. I'm your assigned watcher from here on out, brat. Hiding his recognition of the name, the boy nodded in acknowledgement before her words caught up to him. Blue eyes narrowed, a snarl in place as he slapped the hand away. Call me a brat again and see what happens to you, hag. Gasps of shock came from the surroundings, all those who recognized Anko anyway, as they awaited the reaction from the famed sadist queen of Konoha, only to be met with a surprise as she just barked a laugh and wrapped an arm around the boy, walking off with him in a tight grip despite his loud protests. That's the spirit, brat. I love it when someone knows how to play the game. Okay, look here, shitbag. The sudden slam of back against a wall came from Naruto being forced into an alleyway once the duo were away from prying eyes, or rather, The eyes had looked elsewhere for a laughing Anko is a dangerous Anko. When he looked up, it was like he was looking directly into the eyes of a different person. That anger he felt dissolving when she looked at him like a beast ready to strike. She stood there in silence, moments passing between them both for a bit before she sighed, anger tinted with pity aimed towards him. Can you guess why I'm assigned your new watcher, Brat? Stop calling me Brat, damn him in F. The feeling of a hand wrapped around his mouth made Naruto look up, blue eyes widening at the kunai now inches from his skull. It's because I know exactly what that new tattoo of yours does. A sister of burden. The hand around his mouth pulled away, drawing back her collar to show a similar trio of Tomo. And I know the urges, the pains, the bliss, and the feelings that come with it. The council has been alerted to your new burden, and they assign me because I know the warning signs, and they trust me to kill you before the mark takes over. But I say fuck that. Blue eyes blinked in confusion as mirth, and a smirk joined the brown ones staring back. You ain't no shinobi yet. His Lordship the Third has assigned me a mission above the council. To train you up to a point that your lack of jutsu means Jack Diddley, like Mike Guy and his brat. Only difference is that I ain't gonna turn you into no mini-me because, no offense, but you ain't got the tits for it. A bright red flush overtook his skin as his eyes involuntarily flicked down, a stammer escaping the boy before another laugh burst from the woman. Kid, again, I know. That tattoo is going to boost every animalistic urge you got and make you engage in it like a drug. So you best get your inhibitions out of the way because you're going to have to give in one way or the other. You get me? The blonde nodded, forcing his blush down with a sigh at the reminder of his new affliction. He looked up at her again, then at the ends of the alleyway. So, what's the first stop, then, Anko-sensei? Glad that the boy could in fact learn manners. Contrary to what her Irika-kun had told her, Anko was quick to wrap an arm back around the boy and walk into the alleyway. Well, first there's finding you some clothes that don't make you look like one of those shitty Civi Nobis that the Academy keeps spitting out, and no orange. No shinobi worth their salt would willingly touch that color. It makes you look like a complete dumbass. Despite the urge to scream at her for his love of orange, and how it was the only thing the shops would let him buy, some part of Naruto faltered as he oddly did not mind being told it this way. No lectures on professional clothing, no lectures on stealth, but genuine blunt honesty that, while insulting, was refreshing. He was immediately knocked from this train of thought by the feeling of his stomach being torn from his body and balls reaching his ankles as she grabbed him by the shoulder and made a hand sign that Irika had made many a time for emergency meetings. After recovering from the unexpected shunshin, with Anko laughing her ass off to the side at him as he emptied the contents of his stomach with hospital food that somehow managed to taste even worse on the way up. The blonde stood there with his hands on his knees and drool dripping off of his chin with a dark glare towards the woman. She showed little care, however, smirking as she gestured to a shop that Naruto had not actually seen before. In fact, none of this seemed familiar to him. Where are we? That's where are we, Anko Sensei-sama? And to answer your dumb little question, the red light district of Konoha. The realization of this caused the blonde to shoot upright, looking left and right in worry. He saw women of little clothing waving at men on the street, and even him, odd men in long jackets with little bags of, hey, Focus on me, Brad. Fighting back the anger, he turned his eyes back to Anko, not enjoying her smirk in the slightest. You can enjoy the eye candy later. This here is the only shop I can guarantee you will give you what you need at a decent price. Go in, give him this list, and tell him Anko sent you. They know what to expect. The blonde looked at the rather large slip of paper in his hands before looking up at the sign above. Vagabond's valuables and violations did not sound like a welcoming shop, but he was convinced if he said otherwise, then he would get thrown in anyways, so in Naruto went, and was immediately assaulted by sounds and lights. A badly tuned radio off to the corner, filling the air with some of the worst jazz the boy had ever listened to, walls upon walls of weapon racks, from classics such as shinobi tools and swords, to large cleavers, bows, crossbows, even a few muskets he knew of farmers possessing to protect their livestock. Then there was the armor, the clothes, all styles he had both seen before and never imagined could be a thing. A cough drew his attention to the desk, where his eyes widened and skin turned as red as it could. If Anko was considered scantily dressed, then this woman might as well have been as naked as they come. Bronze skin that spoke of a Suna heritage, amber-colored eyes, long tresses of jet black hair, and a singular deerskin vest that hung open with no shirt underneath, and the baggiest white pants with a ribbon belt sat upon a frame that he could have studied for his now lost anti-perv jutsu with ease. She smirked at him, leaning down as she extracted the lit cigarette from her lips. Now why oh why is the famous brat of foxes here in my humble little abode? Embarrassment turned to anger, to confusion at her words. His expression must have been obvious as she stood up, giggling to herself. The third's law means jack all here, kid. None of his ninja are willing to come in here to enforce it. So I'll ask again, what you want? Vaggies isn't no place for some kid. The boy just walked over, slowly, offering up the paper he had gotten from Anko. I was told to hand you this. Apparently my new sensei thinks you can help me look less like a Civainobi. He totally wasn't going to admit he liked the term. It described people like Ami rather well. What are they now? Well, let OL Vaggie have a look here and... H.A.? Ha ha ha. The bark of laughter made Naruto jump back, watching with worry as the woman fell back over the chair she was sitting on prior, her bare feet kicking in the air as she cackled. A and KO has a student? OL snake bitch. Oh my god, this is too good. Of course she'd get the shrimp. The more she laughed, the angrier he got. The more she ignored him, the more that anger grew. He did not see Anko looking in with an expression of concern, because all he could see was red. The laughter trailed off, but his anger didn't, and when a loud crack filled room, well, legs stopped in their flailing before their owner got up at breakneck speed. Eyes narrowed as the boy extracted his bandaged fist from the wood of the rack next to him, with his flesh already pushing the splinters out, even as the clanging and clattering of weapons hitting the floor surrounded him. Stop! Mocking. Me! The response she gave was to lean over and slowly blow smoke into his face, causing him to cough and back up from the cloud with a growl, the black veins covering his face and neck pulsing before fading slightly, the boy's eyes becoming a little hazy. Ashu. Never had a taste of OL Nun Green before, kid. Trust me, she'll help when it comes to controlling that temper of yours. Or you could just smash more of my shop up, sure. The embarrassed blush that took over his expression was followed by him rushing to try and mount the weapons again, only for the creak and smash of the now off-balanced weapon rack to follow his attempt, as well as a fist to the top of his head. I was fucking joking. Attempting to ignore Anko's laughter from the doorway, Vaggie simply sighed before picking the blonde up off the floor and away from the miniature health hazard he had created. You're lucky I'm a drunk twit's breaking my shit. Now shut up as I read the shopping list that your new sensei made MHM. Ok, alright, alright. He simply gave her a deadpan look as she pulled the list out and examined it like some kind of encoded message. A quick glimpse at the handwriting helped explain why. Right, off with your clothes. The fact he had no idea why he was being asked that stood out on his face like a sore thumb at that. Her snicker following as she turned to him. I need to see what I'm working with, Mr. Sivinobi. She wants you to have a weapon, clothes, and some kind of basic armor. So get back here and off with him. Don't worry about me being some boy-grabbing hag. I like him bigger than waist height. The insult at his height definitely helped dispel his worry as he went around the counter and ignored her pulling down some kind of curtain to hide them both. Fabric soon hit the floor as he stepped out of his shorts, the shirt following, leaving him in only a pair of Toad imprinted boxers. But that wasn't what her eyes were drawn to. Anko, get in here. For fuck's sakes, Vag. You can't dress a boy by yourself? Sweet Cammy on a bun. The purple pineapple came around the corner fast enough, only to gaze in shock at what Naruto was doing his best to hide. His body was nothing like your normal shinobis, malnourished from only eating ramen, yet the signs of it healing slowly were there. What truly drew their gaze, however, was the already developing body mass that took the form of pectoral and shoulder musculature that no shinobi going for an ounce of flexibility should ever have. Kid, what the fuck? You weren't this buff when I pinned you against the wall. I would have felt it. As if awaiting her words, his musculature began to shrink there, and then steam escaping the skin through its pores. Piss him off again, Vag. His eyes went to her with a look of betrayal. The woman's eyes to her with a look of shock before they turned to glee. She turned to him and smirked, cracking her neck as she engaged in what she did best. Well, where should I start? I mean, the kid ain't got a hope in hell if he's being trained as a shinobi. Pretty sure you need to reach above someone's kneecaps for that. And those hands. Can you even hold a kunai with how clumsy your ass is? Not to mention stealth, charisma, any form of social requirements. All of that might as well be flushed down the shitter if he's going to go back to that orange wearing twit we saw paint the Hokage. My Cammy, I'd be better off just pushing you both out of my shop before letting someone get killed by a fresh academy student wearing my product dash. Raph. She barely had enough time to duck as a full-on table was thrown at her, wide eyes looking up at the now much bigger blonde shrimp. Blonde hair that hung around his waist, rippling, bulging muscles that looked ready to split the skin, crimson-toned eyes, and black markings extending all across his body. Slowly she stood back up, hands out as if showing a wild animal. She was unarmed and safe, her voice a whisper as she backed up to the other woman in the room. Anko, what the fuck? For the purple net herself, her mind was flashing back to the report she had been given in regards to the boy by the third. A slow grin overtaking her lips as she chuckled to herself. A heavy repopulation of cells that could be called mutated. Kid, calm the fuck down. This is just your new bloodline kicking in. The blonde looked to her in angered confusion. eyes flickering between red and blue. Your anger is fueling the negative part of the seal, which is fueling that chakra, which is in kind subconsciously augmenting your cellular structure. Like some kind of, I don't know what okay. I just know that if you can harness that, then you have an on command power up like the seal was supposed to be. Anko would be hard pressed to admit she had to resist a glare at the boy, especially since it was over the same seal she herself was ostracized for. Her eyes ran over it, looking it over before she blinked. "Oi, Brad." The growl she got in return was all the answer he gave. Focus on that feeling again, that anger, that rage, and then try to cover your body with it. He did as he was asked, or at least tried to. How do you cover your body with something? But still, he closed his eyes and focused. 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 It's that kid again. He shouldn't be a shinobi. Did you hear he failed? I'm glad. He won't be anywhere near our kids. They all knew. Get out of here and take your damn mask. Get away from my store, you brat. My mommy says you're a bad person. They all knew. The sharp feeling of something slicing through his arm knocked the boy from his thoughts. His eyes wide as he looked up at Anko, whose arm was still extended and whose lips were drawn up in a smirk. What the hell, you crazy bitch? I just finished healing from those cuts. What cut, Brad? This one, lifting up his arm. The blonde's anger faded when his eyes landed on where he did in fact see blood from a cut, just not the cut itself. He felt it. He knew it had happened, but his eyes widened as he looked at the cut with well. He didn't look at a cut, just a thin line that was slowly disappearing. He had never healed this fast before. Another nick in the same place. This time the kunai, not hidden in the slightest, as he hissed in pain and instinctually channeled chakra to it, as he was told to speed up his healing before. And it was gone. The cut was gone. There was nothing, not even blood this time. Anko was gleefully grinning with schemes flooding her head, entirely missing as the boy took a kunai from the ground and lifted it above his hand, only to watch it fall. Kid, stop. This unfortunately had the undesired effect of making the blonde miss the small cut across his palm he was going to make, his jump of surprise causing the blade to miss, and go through his finger instead, all of his finger, as he screamed in pain and dropped to his knees, holding his now three-fingered hand as blood poured out the top. Anko cursed under her breath and went to grab the missing digit, only for it to burn away in the same way flesh normally does when exposed to tailed beast chakra. Fuck. Okay, kid, don't panic. Vaggie, give me a first aid kit dash. And no, wait. She turned on a boy, about to berate him for not only cutting off his finger, but also denying her order, only to watch in sick fascination as fucking bone, physically grew out of the stump that remained. Then threads that resembled veins and smaller ones of muscle fiber. The red glow of the fox's chakra coming from the wound as his body physically sewed him a new finger from chakra and regrown cells, until a new finger, one that was flexed slowly with pink, new skin, stood in the old one's place. 3 pairs of eyes blinked, one thought shared between their minds. What the fuck? Location, Hokage Tower. So yeah, that's what happened, Hokage-sama. The kid just sprouted his finger back like he was a bloody plant. Anko exhaled to herself, watching the sun setting off in the distance to the horizon behind her village's leader as she finished off her report. She would have liked to have done this earlier, but her new student had required her attention first in making sure he was both safe at home and had a doctor there to check up on his hand to ensure that the new digit he had grown was not missing anything or, well, okay, to just check up on the entire situation as a whole, since no one really had any clue what regrowing a missing finger could mean. And then there was the waiting for brats to come and go with their missions, waiting for appointments. Sure, she could have said the K word and gotten in immediately, but she wanted to try and keep this on the down low for now, for Naruto's sake. She could do without the old man taking small glances at her tits, however. She dressed like this for her enjoyment, damn it, not anyone else's. The soft exhale of smoke drew her attention, standing to attention a moment later when he stood and turned his back to her, staring out his office window at an apartment building in the distance where the lights had just flicked on. In your own theorized words, Anko, what would you say you saw today? She blinked a few times before coughing into her hand, letting the professional side down a bit since he had asked for her own words. I think the brat has some form of superpowered regeneration that would make your old student throw her back out in jealousy. He rebuilt a finger-old man from nothing. Just grew it back, no problem. I know the report said his body was saturated with the QB's chakra and regenerated cells en masse. But sudden muscle growth? Regeneration from nothing? Sir, I don't think I can actually do anything to teach this kid. He has no way of using jutsu. And if that's how his body grows, I don't have anything physical to teach him either. He's never going to have the physicality to fight the way I do. He would have been much better off with Guy. As she tailed off at the end of her report, Anko's voice slowly seeped into a rarely heard tone of disappointment. It was not often she admitted a lack of ability to do something after all, but the small sigh she heard coming from the man in question quickly drew her from the pit of her own thoughts. Sir, sorry, my dear, just wondering a few things. The boy's healing has always been advanced with the Uzumaki bloodline and that damned beast chakra, but now, total cellular regeneration. Tsunade would have loved to pick the boy. The Kunoichi nodded, knowing and recognizing the similarities to the famed medic's own medical prowess. When he turned to her with a look of concern, however, she banished those thoughts and stood back to attention. I fear you're correct in thinking that your style of fighting and your techniques would do nothing for the boy. With no pathways, it seems he can only achieve the bare minimum of chakra control by saturating his body, muscles, skin, and bone structure with the volatile mixture of beast and cursed chakra his seal grants him. To know how closely related it is to his anger brings me worry, as that is exactly what we were trying to avoid. The two broke into a heavy silence, the unspoken facts between them hanging in the air. A silence soon broken by the boy in question barging through the door, a frustrated look on his face and steam escaping from his clothes. Herzuin's poor receptionist shaking next to a fist-shaped indentation in the wall, earning a look of disapproval that helped serve to curb the rising anger he saw in the boy. I hope you understand I will be taking that out of your next stipend. The bobbing of blonde hair was his answer, the unasked question of Naruto's reason for being there hanging over him, the blonde taking a deep breath before speaking. Old man, I want to become a shinobi apprentice. The sigh it drew from Hiruzen's mouth only caused the growing fear in the blonde's heart to grow ever more than it did that night. Naruto, you need to understand that I cannot grant that request. As long as we do not understand what is going on with your body, you would be more of a liability than a help on any mission. What is happening with you has never been recorded before in shinobi history, pre-Wearing Clan era or after. The blonde looked ready to announce his displeasure at hearing this, but was silenced by a sharp stare from the old man. You are an anomaly, who by all logic we know to this day, should be dead. Your body is being fueled by two sources of completely toxic energy. One alone that kills anyone it comes into contact with, and the other with a 10% survival rate, and that being the luck of it. The fact you're standing here is nothing short of a miracle, and you want me to squander that? No, no, I will not. It took all the old man had not to look away from the heartbreak and the growing anger in the boy's eyes directed at him. That is until he noticed a look of recognition in Anko's own gaze settled upon the photos on his desk, namely one of a white-haired youth with toadish features. Something to say, Jounin. Brown eyes flicked to him with a wide gaze, a stammered cough coming from the woman as she was removed her thought process. I believe I know a way that the brat could be trained, but dash. Ow! The words were cut off as a blonde missile impacted her, her trench coat struggling to hold the boy hanging from her collar as she attempted to remove him from her. Get off of me, you damn brat. I was getting to it, weren't I? Pushing the now embarrassed blonde off of her and straightening out her coat, she shot him a small glare before looking back to the amused, yet stern gaze of her Hokage. Continue, Anko. Of course now, as I was saying, brat, I might know of a way he could be trained. The usage of nature chakra is not an undocumented event in our own village's history, sir. While I doubt and do not encourage this boy be trained in anything similar to sage mode by any of our summon clans. Not only due to the lack of pathways to safely navigate the energy, but a lack of tenketsu to perform the summoning technique in the first place. The training they undergo after becoming one might prove useful to him. Both boy and elder stared at the woman, one in confusion, the other in contemplation before the latter of the two let out a small chuckle, a raised eyebrow following it as he smiled at the woman. And you thought you wouldn't be a good teacher for the lad. Go on. Choking back the pride that rose in her at that small approval of her thought process, Anko nodded and turned to the boy. Sages, if we follow the example I read from Lord Jiraiya, when we discovered what this seal of ours actually does, require a peaceful mind and frequent meditation while motionless to absorb nature chakra and enter their famed sage mode. The brat, ignoring Naruto's angered shout at being referred to as a brat once again, she looked to the aged Kage with her classic Anko brand smirk. I think you're right, sir. He definitely can't become a shinobi, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean he can't become a kick-ass fighter. Her excitement, as well as a dripping of sadism in her voice, did not do much to quell the worries in Hiruzen's heart. Instead, his eyes hardened, and the grip on his pipe got harder and kind. Anko, I do not think I like what you are suggesting to me. But she continued on, her smirk only getting wider. Sir, please just hear me out. The BR dash. Naruto could become a living nightmare on the battlefield. Think of Iwa's berserkers. They used nothing but their own bodies and large weapons such as axes, hammers, Zanbados to cleave entire units of our shinobi apart in the war. We could use that if we can find a way for Naruto to control and tap into the infamous Jinchuriki rage while saturating his body with the beast chakra. He could become a wrecking ball on two legs dash, and in doing so, become the same monster that the villagers have feared him to be. The smirk fell from her face as she watched the kind grandfather disappear, the war veteran in his place. Dot, remind me of the things we faced, Anko, the things I faced while you were still in the academy. Those mindless beasts you were referring to were not in control. They were not in command of their emotions, but ruled by them. There's a reason that the creation of their kind was labeled a forbidden act by the end of the Third Great Shinobi War. The three stood in silence, one unwilling to move on the matter, while another looked ready to argue her point, and the third, shaking as he saw a side of his grandfather he had never seen before. But Naruto was not only scared, but angry. Angry that he was watching his dream fall apart again before his eyes, just as he had found a way to reclaim it. Before Anko could speak once more, the soft pat of shoes on floorboards came from behind Naruto, a hand on his shoulder rooting him to the ground as both occupants of the room turned to him. Dragon, I do hope there's a reason you left your post. Of course, sir. Frankly, Hokage-sama, I believe you are letting your personal views on the boy cloud your judgment. Anko barely managed to restrain her hitched breath as she watched the Umbu commander himself overstep and break protocol, something that could get him marked down at Chunin, or worse, revoked as a shinobi completely if his next words did not go well. For Hiruzen, to say there was a cold anger under the surface of being second-guessed by his own subordinate like this would have been an understatement. When no reply came, Dragon took this as a chance to continue. You are treating this boy as a civilian child, which he is not. He is at his very core a weapon for this village. Lord Forth set that in stone when he sealed the fox inside of him. Denying it does little but blunt the weapon for when we may need it. You fear him becoming a wild beast when we should treat him as a blade. Control, not the reckless abandon that the fence sitter employed. Despite the anger he felt, the third could not dismiss the fact he partially agreed with this sentiment. The war vet in him too unearthed to ignore his natural instincts as a leader instead of a grandfather. For Naruto, he felt himself rooted to the spot by what he saw. The eyes on him not of his beloved Gigi, but someone else he had never seen before. Where had his grandfather gone? What would you recommend then, Dragon? And make it quick before I change my mind. Any attempt Naruto made to speak was silenced as he felt the hand squeeze down on his shoulder in warning. Inu wished for the boy to be on his team, but now his other would-be students have been assigned to the reserves instead, with that boy as his part-time apprentice, a watcher to ensure the flight risk does not flee the nest. I feel the same must be done with the Jinchuriki, with insurance, to ensure he does not lose himself to his newfound rage. Anko's eyes narrowed, stepping towards the Umbu in white before halting at the sight of him reaching for his blade. The fear on Naruto's face clear and simple. The two stood in a deadlock, one with fury, one with stoic preparedness. Only the sound of Hiruzen sitting behind his desk broke the silence. Yet neither looked from the other until, very well, Dragon. The tired voice of the Hokage cut through the silence like a hammer. His eyes tired, his shoulders heavy as he took a slow drag of the pipe in his hand and exhalation of smoke across his desk before he spoke once more, or would have if not for the boy in question. Ashiyi, Gigi? What's going on? What does he mean insert him in NMF? The blonde was cut off, the hand on his shoulder covering his mouth as Anko stood off to the side, growling in anger. This is bullshit. Come on, old man. You can't seriously be considering this? He doesn't need insurance, Dash. Your voice does not matter in these regards, Jounin. The cold and icy tone in the Umbu commander's voice cut her tirade off at the knees, a shiver going down Naruto's back as he looked at his grandfather with pleading eyes and saw only hollow pain and a plea for forgiveness. Naruto Uzumaki is hereby promoted to Genin rank under Jounin team leader Kakashi Hitaki, with 1 month of probationary conditioning under Umbu watch to be educated of his role. The application of seals to ensure his obedience in moments of his cursed seal running out of control shall be applied henceforth. That is all. Dismissed. Naruto's eyes widened at the fear in Anko's, the woman lunging for him before the telltale sign of Shunshin left her alone in the office with her leader, shaking shoulders, acting as the warning before she looked at him with eyes full of hate. You heartless. He was willing to train under someone, and instead you'll turn him into a slave. You're being no better than those damn Hyuga bastards. But she got no reply, the Hokage's gaze coming to rest on the table in front of him, a tired sigh leaving him. I'm tired of my decisions being second-guessed by those I command tonight, Anko. One more word out of you, and I will have you brought back down at Shunin. You wanted this, and Dragon was correct. Left unchecked, Naruto will lose himself to his rage. I promised him I would not let him become a tool or a weapon, and I intend to hold to that promise, even if I need to protect him from himself. The leash will always hold more freedom than the kennel. Despite herself, the woman could not help but scoff as she dismissed herself, leaving the office with but a few words as the door closed behind her. Depends on who's holding the leash, Hokage-sama. Location: Umbu headquarters, secure cell. Of what? What the what hit me? Blinking the blurriness from his vision, Naruto groaned under his breath at the pain he felt in his head, the pulsing thrum of blood in his ears, and the strain he felt in his arms. Pulling at them, his eyes shot wide open at the sound of metal, to see his wrists bound to something off in the shadows of the room by chains marred in writing. As he pulled on them, he was shocked to find his chakra would not respond to him. Genin Uzumaki. The voice, metallic in nature and resembling that of a radio, jostled him from his attempts to escape. The crack of a switch being thrown and the sudden bright lights shone into his eyes from above made him squint and look away, blinking the spots from his vision. Genin Uzumaki, confirm your identity. Confirm his what? His head slowly turned back to the lights, a confused expression on his face. You just said my name. You know who I am, Dash. Genin Uzumaki, confirm your identity. Flinching at the shout, he looked up to the lights to see none other than Dragon behind a glass screen. Another Umbu with a moss befitting a bear at his side. Hi. I am Genin Naruto Uzumaki. The bear nodded, pulling back for what he now saw to be a microphone. The two spoke for a moment, before the unlocking of a door behind him and the sound of someone walking in filled the air. Genin Uzumaki, do not attempt to resist your bindings. They are for your safety as much as ours. As you just heard, Umbu Operative Hawk has entered your cell. They will be applying to you the SEAL's commission to ensure your obedience to country and government of the Land of Fire. Should your own seals cause you to lose control, do you confirm? No, he did not confirm. He did not agree to this. He wanted out. Out? The sudden pulling on his chains and thrashing from the boy knocked the freshly wetted brush from Hawk's hand. The clattering lost to the sounds of chains. No, I do not confirm. What the hell is the old man thinking? He knows I'm a Loy Dash. Thwack! The boy was flung from his spot on the ground, the chains pulling him back as a heavy fist impacted the side of his face. The ringing in his ears was followed by the swelling of his cheek, then deflating of it, a whimper of pain coming from the boy as he felt a loose tooth be forcibly pushed out by a new one, the cracked ivory shattering on contact with the ground as he spat out. Hawk, that is enough. Disengage. The grunt of frustration coming from his side told him just what had happened, the muttering behind the glass growing louder before a different voice, one he recognized as Dragon, followed over the speaker. Naruto Uzumaki. That seal on your stomach makes it so any claims of loyalty, any claims of obedience you may make, null and void as far as the views of your fellow shinobi are concerned. It will drive you to rage. It will drive you to madness. And it will drive you to be no more than a rabid beast should you be left unchecked. It is the cursed seal of one of our greatest enemies, and to shut it off from you would result in your consequential death. Much like the chains at your sides, these seals will be for your protection as much as those around you. Understand. It took a few moments, the words spinning in Naruto's head, before he let out a soft hiccup. The sigh over the speaker was followed by a different voice, a female voice this time. Apologies for Dragon's bluntness. Jinin Uzumaki. He doesn't know how to speak to children. That voice, I know this voice, but where? We know that you're not a traitor. We know that you are a fine example of loyalty to the village. But you must understand that much like a tanto without its sheath, you are dangerous, not by your own design, but by the bad fortune that you have been burdened with. These seals are being put in place, not to harm you, but help you, like a teacher scalding his student to correct their mistakes. They will not be pleasant, but a day will come when you will not need them any longer. Do you understand? Moments passed before Naruto nodded his head in the affirmative, a relieved sigh coming from the voice before he felt the brush against his skin. He stayed as still as he could, trying to ignore how the brush tickled at his skin. He did notice, however, the scent of blood. It was potent in every drop of ink on his skin. It was saturating the air at this point. Even as he felt the brush leave him and join to the other arm. Then his back, then his legs. For what seemed like hours he was kept in silence, Hawk never coming around his front without a blindfold being applied to his eyes. Jinin Uzumaki back to Dragon, it seemed. What is being applied to right now is an altered version of the heavenly prison seal used in Hozuki Castle, named the Binding Roots Gateway. It was created in the event of capturing a Jinchuriki like yourself and turning them into a loyal weapon. When it is activated, it will use your own chakra to fuel attacks of increasing levels on your central nervous system until deactivated. When Hawk has finished applying the seal to you, you will be exposed to a mild level of it, so you may understand the effects. Is this understood? Confirm this statement. Knowing this was Umbu talk at this point for, do you get what I'm saying? The boy nodded with a small sigh and a shiver. He heard Hawk chuckle next to him, his eyes flicking to them as best he could before a hand forcibly turned his head back around to face the window. "Sorry, kid. Can't let you see my face. I never did like working with a mask on." Look, Dragon is talking all sorts of official mumbo-jumbo, but it comes down to this. You don't do as you're told, or you need to be pulled back. This seal will help act as a reminder to keep you in line. You'll be able to live a normal life with it. Just don't break any rules, okay? Not given a chance to reply, Naruto felt the brush finally leave his skin as Hawk stepped back, the shadow of the man raising his arm in sight. Seal application complete. Engaging in sealing in 10, 9, 8, 7 dash. The boy was unprepared in the slightest for the agony that came with the feeling. His body seized up, every muscle cramping at once, his eyes feeling like they would pop out of his head, and even his teeth feeling like they would shatter from how hard he clenched them. The lines and seals on his skin burned, a deep dark red as they seared into the skin. Boiling blood dropped onto the floor below him. As his eyes went bloodshot at the pain, a molar cracking as he pulled at the chains, and only then did the pain stop, the boy falling limp forward as the chains held him up. Blood dripping from the already healing 4th degree burns the seals had applied to mark his skin, the scars that remained resembling branches and roots of a tree sprouting from his chest. Sealing complete. "Genin Uzumaki, are you conscious?" The slow turning of the blonde's hand and a middle finger raised up towards the window. Before that, too fell limp, drew a chuckle from the man. "Good, good. When Hawk leaves the room, we shall disengage the chains. Take the time you need, and then exit the room through the door to your left. If you feel you need assistance, simply swing yourself to your left." It was weak, but the boy stumbled to his feet, slowly supporting himself on shaking legs as muscles bulged and steam exited his fresh wounds. The locking of a door behind him was all the warning he got before the support he had been relying on gave way, and just like the chains, he too crumpled to the ground in the warm pools of his own blood. Sigh. "Sparrow, go collect the boy. His training begins at 0500 hours. For the second time in recent memory, Naruto's eyes slowly opened to a sterile room with sterile air, that clinical smell of cleanliness tickling at his nose and irritating his dry throat. His body, aching so, barely lifted itself out of its silken prison. Oh, how the skin stung as the sheets pulled across it, his eyes going down to his chest, to his arms, to his legs. The scars that remained, reinforced by the Fuinjutsu embedded into them, truly did resemble branches of a tree and winding roots. Letters, and such no longer eligible, as much as they were melded together to form twisting bark and odd symbols across his body. It felt unreal. Yesterday, he woke up in the hospital thinking he could go out and attempt once again to become a shinobi by his grandfather's words, and now here he was waking up in another medical cot, in a prison, marked with a seal that he had no choice but to don. The beeping clock that had awoken him kept its annoying repetition until he turned to it and slammed his fist down upon it. The once flashing 4:55, now a mess of broken plastic. It stung as he watched the plastic shards push themselves out of his skin, but when it closed up with not a drop of blood, it was easily forgotten. To be honest, in the face of the pain he felt yesterday, it was barely anything in comparison. I don't think that's how you're supposed to shut those off, Genin Uzumaki. Jumping off his bed, he turned to the voice only to see the door close behind a black-robed figure. a mask befitting a bird on her face. That voice again. I am Sparrow. I will be your handler for your stay here in Umbu HQ. Sit, eat. His eyes went to the tray in her hands as he lowered himself to the bed, only to blink at the singular bar that was sitting on it, along with a glass of something. Sparrow-sensei? I don't suppose you have any ramen on hand, do you? If a mask could give a deadpan stare, he was sure this is what it would look like. He sighed and reached for the bar, only for her voice to cut through the air again. Ramen, while okay for a mild snack or a rushed lunch, should not be the basis for a diet. Jinin Uzumaki. While staying here, you will be instructed to eat and given only to eat these nutrient bars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They are carefully crafted meal supplements that shall take care of your caloric intake, nutrient requirements, and with any luck, help fix your malnourished state. Disappointment ran through the blonde, but he dare not speak it. This was the only Umbu that had been nice to him so far, so when he turned his eyes to the black, bubbling drink, he gulped. And that. Another few seconds of silence, making he boy worried before Sparrow sighed. Cola, a carbonated drink consisting of citrus fruits and a caramel flavoring, imported from the land of hot springs. Trust me, you'll want it. The blonde blinked before looking down at it, shrugging. It didn't sound that bad. With little thought, he picked up the nutrient bar and took a large bite out of it, stuffing the second half in just as fast without worrying about the flavor. Oh dear God, he should have worried about the flavor. Nearly choking as the mass went down his throat, the boy took the drink and down it too, coughing while slapping his chest. H, how did you somehow give beige a flavor? How can something be so plain and so revolting all at once? Sparrow did not give the boy an answer, simply stepping back towards the door as the boy continued his coughing spree. Next time, be up in time to get the nutrient rations that others do. Now, come, you are late for training. Scrambling to his feet, he ran after the woman in Umbu uniform, hoping today would not be as painful as the day before. His hopes proved to be false, as Naruto laid with his face embedded into concrete with the bare-masked Umbu from before standing atop him with a heavy boot print being pushed into the blonde's cheek. Late, Jinin Uzumaki, do you think I'm a joke? The struggling blonde barely managed to mutter out a no before the boot pushed harder down onto him, causing him to cry out in pain. Do you think my time is yours to waste? He let out another struggling grasp for air, thankful when the man pulled their foot from his skull, only to groan as he received a kick to the stomach that sent him sliding across the stone floor to the wall instead. Get up, not wanting to be a doormat again. Naruto rose to his feet just in time to roll out of the way as the Umbu dashed towards him. A spin kick embedding steel heel into the wall as Naruto scrambled away. What the hell, geezer bear? His answer came in the form of another heel, just scraping the skin from his chin as he managed to back away. As the skin healed back, Naruto was forced to duck, roll, dive, and dodge the kick sent his way. A shinobi must be prepared at any time to fight. You come here with no armor, no weapon in your skivvies. Are you insulting me, boy? Bones cracked as Naruto crossed them to block another downwards heel kick, causing the boy to hiss in pain. He channeled chakra to the broken bones, only for the effort to prove for little as a second kick followed up the first, breaking his guard and sending him skidding across the floor. Stand up. I'm not done with you yet, Brad. That fucking word again. As the footsteps got closer to him, Naruto began to push himself up off the floor, only for the same boot to come crashing down on the back of his head. He felt teeth crack and his nose shatter, but this time he did not let Bear know it. As blood pooled around him and he felt the ichor block his airways, he began to push back, only managing to turn his head to the side before Bear shoved it back down to the concrete. What was that shit heap? Speak up. I can't hear you from under my boot. Naruto's eye tuned to glare up at Bear. One half of his vision blood red from the pool was soaked in, the other blood red in appearance as steam rose from his face, his nose snapping back into place and teeth growing back out of the gums. I said, I'm gonna rip that fucking mask off of your face. Bear's answer came in the form of loud crack as his boot clipped the side of Naruto's head, only for the boy to grab his ankle with a tight grip and tighter claws. Get off of me. Reaf. Bear had little time to prepare as he felt himself be hoisted from the floor and flung through the air as if he were a rag doll, thankfully having the skill to reinforce his landing with chakra as he hit the wall on the far end of the training room. To his eyes, the blonde skin began to steam all across its exposed surface, the arm that threw him twice the size of the other, the black veins of his curse mark in full display. Okay, then Uzumaki. We got the beast out. Now, let's see if you can control it. Leaping off of the wall, Bear took off in a sprint towards the feral boy at mid-Chunin speed, ducking under a wild swing from the lad and returning it with a backwards fist to the head. Even as he heard the boy's skull bounce off the floor, he was pressed to bend backwards as Naruto turned and dived for him, Kyuubi enhanced fangs and claws on full display. Boot to the stomach, Bear flung the boy into the air and flipped off his hands to gain some distance, taking no satisfaction in the way the boy landed with a sharp crack. Any trained, I could see the arm was broken until it wasn't. RAEH. Bear watched on in amazement as the arm snapped itself back into position as if the injury had never appeared in the first place, mere moments after it had been broken. He ducked, turned, and rolled away from the attempted clawing of his mask from the primal pounce of the enraged Naruto, holding up a ram symbol. Fine! Bellowing rage gave way to screams of pain as the tattoo on his skin blazed an angered red, black marks and bulging muscles receding before Naruto collapsed, panting, steaming. You passed my first test, but failed the second, Uzumaki. You will refer to me as Bear Sensei from now on, and we will be working on controlling your rage and your strength, understand. The weak nod from the boy allowed the man to relax, looking down to the thin lines of red the boy's claw had drawn on his ankle. Go on. You don't want to be late for Sparrow's lesson. She's just as harsh a sadist as I am. SM. As it turned out, Sparrow as at least thrice the sadist that Bear was. Strapped to a medical chair in a sterile room, Naruto's eyes followed the Umbu operative as she walked around the room with a doctor's coat on in favor of her standard issue cloak and armor. Her mask containing wrappings that did well to hide her skin and hair color by binding her head and neck. All he saw was the black voids in her mask that hid her eyes from him, the boy pulling on his restraints nervously. So, what's the point of this training, Sparrow Sensei? The lack of a response from the woman drew more growing hesitance from the boy, tugging on his restraints a little harder before she rested one of her hands on his and proceeded to slice off all but his thumb in one fell swoop. As he screamed out in pain, he barely managed to focus as the woman collected the fingers up before they shriveled away into ash from the Kyuubi's chakra. Interesting. So she wasn't exaggerating. Your lost extremities really do dissolve away. But he was not paying attention, thrashing in his restraints as blood poured from the vacant stumps. She lashed out, striking him across the face to make him focus on her, tears pouring down his cheeks from the pain. What the hell, you crazy bitch? Regenerate. His eyes focused on her, hatred in them as the cursed seal began to flare up only for her to raise the binding seal. The boy reduced to further screams of pain as the seal combined with his missing fingers racked his body in pain. Again, she spoke. Regenerate. Without your seal. Not wanting to go through further pain, Naruto focused on his hand, guiding the chakra inside of him the same way he had back at the shop. Sparrow watched on in awe as once again the bones grew first, then muscle, then skin. Huh, there, happy no HHH. This time she did not bother collecting the fingers, absently wiping the blood from her mask as she stared down at him. Faster. She watched on as her student thrashed in the chair at the pain, crying out as any child with low pain tolerance would. The other hand was the next to go, coating her sandals in blood as both set of stumps sprayed the life essence. Regenerate Uzumaki. The regeneration occurred slowly this time, the boy unable to focus on the feeling of it outside of the pain as he doubled forward, gagging at the sensations he was being forced to feel. Vu. Why? Sparrow tisked beneath her mask, walking back around and pulling Naruto's head upwards, clamping down a shackle around his neck to keep him sat upright before she slowly sat down upon his lap. Inside, he could see her eyes at last. Green, such a beautiful shade of green, yet so empty. Her voice tickling his ear. You cannot escape any more Uzumaki. No jutsu, no substitution, no defenses. What you cannot dodge will hurt you, cut you, slice you, bludgeon, crush, rip you apart. You will be a liability to anyone on the battlefield if you do not regenerate from your wounds. Pain cannot hold you back any longer, or will get everyone you love killed now. A sharp crack came from Naruto's nose as she slammed her elbow into it, the bloody ichor splattering her mask and his shirt. Regenerate! The boy just coughed in pain, unable to hide the wince as he felt bone snap back into place and flesh sew shut. Another, this time to the collarbone as she snapped it in two. Regenerate! Please stop. You enemies won't stop Uzumaki. Why should I? Regenerate. She watched in morbid fascination as the bone realigned itself and snapped back into place once more, taking a full 15 seconds to do so. This time, she let her hand come under his eye to the claw marks under it, raising a scalpel to the orb which had already been documented as regenerating once more. Before it entered, she stopped, her green eyes locking with his under her mask. Trust me, Uzumaki, your enemies will seek to do everything they can to make you beg for them to stop. As he tried to thrash for nothing, even as the scalpel got closer to his eye. The blonde's gaze flicked all over in a panic, even as he felt her thumb peel back the lid. Torture is the bread and butter of any shinobi intelligence. If you cannot defend, then you must learn to endure now. Regenerate. The blonde's screams of pain filled the hallway of the Umbu HQ for hours to come. SM. When nightfall came outside of the Umbu halls, moonlight shining down on the village below, one particular kunoichi could be seen drinking her fill outside of her usual dango hut. Anko, downing sake by the bottle, groaned as she dragged a hand down her face. Can't believe I let them have the kid. How could he do this? I thought he was better than that. The sound of laughter drew her attention to a passing Janine team. A blonde with clothing much like her own, a boy with hair like her own, and a boy with an appetite like her own, her eye twitching as she looked at the sensei and dared fate to give a similarity. Hey, monkey boy, the walking chimney stack known as a Summa Suratobi stopped on a dime, looking over to Anko with a blink and then a small smile. Team in tow, he made his way over to her with a low chuckle. Getting plastered already, Anko? Your promotion to Jounin proving that stressful for you. Sensei? Who is this? The blondie piped up, Anko's eyes flickering to her before watching the recognition in her eyes. Oh, you're that woman Dad complains about all the time for being too rough on prisoners at TNI. Asuma's deadpan stare and Anko's snort met the young Yamanaka in reply, before the kunoichi raised her sake and downed it in one. Yep, hick. That's me. Oh well. Trouble-causing Anko, poison to all she knows. It did not take long for red flags to start waving in Asuma's head, the man turning to his genin with a smile. Why don't you three go and get some dango, my treat? With a hungry Akimichi dragging the other two off despite their protests, Asuma waited till they were out of sight before sitting next to the snake summoner and leaning down. Okay, what's the matter? You're never this drunk unless something has gone wrong. Did they miss Orochimaru a guy dash? Where? Anko jumped up onto the table. Kanai brandished as she looked around manically, only to fall back on her chair when she remembered where she was using said Kanai as an anchor to pull herself back up to a sitting position with the chair. They took him ASU. He blinked, looking at the pouting interrogation expert as she began carving something into the table. Took? Who? My fairy dust prince. The fuck do you think, monkey brains? My student. They took my student from me. I thought they finally gave me someone to work with, but no. Your papa's own education squad took him. The bearded man's skin began to pale rapidly, knowing exactly who the education squad was. They took a genin? Are you serious, Anko? The woman nodded, looking back to him with an angry glare and tears in her eyes. And your old goat allowed them. The kid had no idea where he was going, but because he had a mark like mine, poof. Off he goes. Bet that bitch Sparrow is already taking advantage of his healing. Shaking those horrifying images from his head, Asuma scooched forwards and leaned in close, frowning as he spoke to her. All right, Anko, tell me everything you can and hold nothing back, got it? Meanwhile, off to the side, Ino Yamanaka could be seen berating her overweight teammate on ordering way too much food once again, while the quieter the trio watched their sensei from the reflection in a nearby window, his eyes focusing on them as he took in every word the man said, best he could with his limited lip reading, although there was one name he picked out with ease, along with a number of different words and phrases. Re-education, training, torture, conditioning, seal away. Naruto. Naruto? Why is he coming up? What don't you want us to know, Sensei? SM. When Hiruzen Sarutobi read the report on his desk, he was surprised to find just how far the depths of his anger could go. Looking up at the woman in front of him, he was, needless to say, furious with what he saw. And yet, even with this expression clear on his face, she continued. She continued to spout off information that no one in his position would want to know about the boy he had signed over to them. When he looked back down at the paper, eyes heavy with fury and guilt, her voice became but a warbled echo, but it did little to hide the horror of what he read. Are you done? Operative Sparrow. She silenced herself in an instant, looking down at her leader as he examined her findings, the paper sadly having one or two blood-stained fingerprints on it, and they both knew it was not her blood. The boy was sent to you for observation, and now I find you torturing the boy. You had to use his seal 87 times. If it was the cage bird seal or worse, he would be dead by now, and God's above. I find it hard to believe that he isn't mentally dead as it is. Removing eyes, fingers, toes, ears, tongue dash. I got tired of him begging. He shouldn't have had to beg. The walls shook with the bellowing roar of grandfatherly rage leaving the Hokage's lips, the two in a stare down as he slowly sat back in his chair. What on earth were you thinking? The woman blinked, slowly taking off her mask before putting it on the desk, letting the old man look upon her face and see the tiredness in it, the disgust, the cold fury, and the hate. I was thinking that I would rather it be someone who'd let him sleep till the next morning than someone who'd go till he died on the battlefield, sir. I care to see him prepare to handle the pain he will feel on the battlefield, with or without our teaching. He had to learn not to call upon his curse mark in stressful situations, and to keep it subdued, he had to learn how to endure the torture and pain he will feel without ways to defend himself from capture or from genjutsu and the like. And we need to know the limit of his healing, else he may suffer a wound he feels he can take and die in the process. So you know who I am. When the mask goes on, Sparrow is all that remains. I get the job done, and I get it done correctly. If you wish for me to not put it on again, I will follow your command. To say the old man looked as tired as they come was an understatement of the highest order. He just gazed into those empty, emerald eyes and sighed, walking around to cup the woman's face, his own reflected in her gaze. I know you mean well, but he is a child, Sparrow. He can't be expected to take all this. We can't be like Danzo and his root. The woman just stared back before turning her empty gaze down to his chest, staring through him as her hand slipped her mask back to her face. It is because he is a child, sir, that I must prepare him for what is to come. The likes of our enemies will not falter because he is young, so he must not when they strike at him without mercy. I will prepare him for what is to come, sir, and then, when it is all said and done, when he greets pain as an old friend and uses it to his strength and not his weakness, then, sir, I will lay my scalpel down. Pain racked his ruined body. Blood coating his wounds and his clothing, his sheets and bandages. No wound lay upon his skin, yet they swam heavily in his gaze as he looked upon his fingers, expecting them to disappear. For hours the day before, he had been told the same command again and again and again: regenerate. Regenerate, regenerate, regenerate. He had begged her to stop, and she had taken his tongue. When he looked at her with fear, she removed his eyes and commanded he regenerate, just to do it all over again. The image of her pulling his eye from its socket while he was forced to watch flashed in his mind again. Those green eyes full of nothing as they watched his ocular organs shrivel to dust in her hand. The blinding white and pain that followed as his eye regenerated in its socket again. Through bloody tears he gazed. Naruto raised a hand to where his eye lay, looking in the reflection of the mirror he had been given, not a scar in place, as he observed the reflection do the same. That was the worst part. Not an injury he had gained the day before had any scar, any sign of how he had suffered, except for just how clean they were in comparison to the rest of him. It had been 5 days since he was brought to this room. And on those 5 days, his lullaby each time was another torture session at the hands of Sparrow. His request to see his grandfather was met with silence. Each morning Bear broke him and battered him against concrete walls. Each afternoon, Sparrow had her way with his flesh through knives, saws. She had even taken a whole hand from him yesterday, and just looking at the pristine appendage made him feel sick from watching how he regrew it. His eyes went to the item on the bedside table in his new room. It looked like a set of pliers, the usual teeth replaced by a loop and a sharp blade. Sparrow had suggested that he practice his pain tolerance on his own, for she would not go easy on him, and it was best he adjust to it as fast as possible. The cruel bitch even promised him ramen for every full hand of fingers he could take. And the worst part, he very nearly took that offer for the sake of feeling something normal again. He had even learned a new trick on the 3rd day, one that he feared showing Sparrow for what she might make him do with it. He let out a small whimper as his fingers peeled back the eyelid to his left eye, the favorite of hers to remove. His nails extended slowly, slipping into the socket as he gagged on the pain. The sound, the feeling of his nails scratching at the back of his own skull as he pulled, the eye popping out as he severed the nerve with a quick snip. But it did not go blind. A thin cord of red chakra extended to the eye as it turned left, turned right, turned back to look at him, and what he saw made him choke back a mouthful of bile. His own gaping eye socket and empty, sagging gaze from its twin, lively blue more akin to a lifeless, stormy gray from the lack of color or life he saw in his own gaze. What am I becoming? A weapon. He turned suddenly, back full of tension and gaze full of fear as the eyes shriveled up and another grew in its place, bloody tears flaking away in the steam as he backed up against the wall. Sparrow stood there before him with her favorite tool in hand, a pair of scissors as large as kitchen knives, before she slipped them away into her pack. The same way any shinobi does, Uzumaki. You are becoming a weapon for your Kage. You lost your ability to channel chakra, so instead you will be given the chance to prove yourself through flesh. I have told you this before. Bear is out on a mission today, so instead you will be learning with me for the day. He wanted to cry. He wanted to sob and scream and kick as she came towards him, his seal wanting to flare up under the risk of her activating the binding roots again, as he curled up and blinked a soft hand on his head. As he shakily looked up at her, He did so to green eyes, looking with worry. No, Biti. Perhaps I have been a bit too harsh on you, if you cower before your teachers stand. The boy slowly, shakily lowered his arms, leaning against the wall as he stood, only to stare with dead eyes as blood dripped from his lips. Sparrow nodded approvingly as she pulled the scissors out of his chest, watching the wound close in a moment rather than a minute. Good. You're learning. Crying out in pain will only encourage your foes. This was how Sparrow taught him. Lower the guard, stab the heart, literally. As she turned on a dime and began walking, he looked down to his claws. If lucky, he could deal a small wound, but then she would have him a writhing mass of pain before putting him back in her chair. Is this how the Nine Tails felt? In a prison with someone taking from them every damn day. He did not need to be told to follow. The second day had taught him what happened if he ignored orders. He did not want to feel that again. The boy walked, uncaring of the fact he was drenched in old blood and in clothing that stank of the past gore. What he did care about was when they missed the left to his classrooms. He did not voice his concerns, too afraid of what Sparrow would do to him if he asked. But he did not need to. The edge of that mask coming into view with the wrappings twisting behind it as she walked. Geninu. Naruto. The first time he had heard his name in a while, the boy looked up at the woman who had been his caretaker, his torturer. Despite what my actions say, I am proud of you for not giving up so far. We all knew this would be difficult for you, Dash. Difficult? It was only his newly gained self-control that kept his seal down, but he could not hide it from Sparrow as his eyes hardened and fists clenched. It is okay to be angry at me, Naruto. It is in controlling that anger that we find success in these experiments. While I feel it would be better not to waste our time with such grandiose milestones for you, Bear and Dragon have requested I bring you to a special classroom for your first lesson with the latter. You will treat him with respect, and he in kind will see to it that you get what you need. When she turned to walk away, she either missed or did not acknowledge the dead stare in Naruto's eyes turned crimson with hate. Genuine hate. Not the mild dislike he showed someone like Sasuke. No, he wanted Sparrow to bleed as he had bled. But he could not strike. The feeling was frustrating. It was infuriating, like a spring wound up but jammed from letting itself go. He absently noticed the black veins on either side of his eyes in a nearby reflection, but he could not find the capability to really care. They came across a door that had no markings on it, not even a lock. As she pushed it open, Naruto had to cover his eyes to not be blinded by something he had not seen since he arrived. Sunshine, blinking away the spots and the blindness. He was assaulted by everything he had missed down in the sterile, dark underground of the base. Fresh air, the rotting leaves on the ground, the wind on his skin, and the absence of the smell of sterility and blood. He ran out, feeling each blade of grass against his feet, the warmth of the sun on his skin a welcome touch. Oh God, how welcome this burning feeling was as he looked down slowly, stone walls on all sides. A katana slid between his ribs, lungs filling up with blood, and a man in a white cloak sitting opposite him across a wooden table, a hand sign held up before slowly relaxing. I see the rumors that you're pathetically weak against Jinjutsu are true, Genin Uzumaki. He pulled the blade free, watching the crimson ichor boil away as the wound closed up, nodding in acknowledgement as the blonde gazed. Noteas? Teased with freedom and you feel nothing? Or are you just so numb that? Sparrow has had quite a time with you, hasn't she? I see your regeneration is subconscious now. A shame that's the only part of you worth anything. The hurtful words meant nothing to the boy as he stared down at him, the one who had put him here in the first place. The man motioned for the boy to sit, a small cushion beside him with his blood still on it. He sat, uncaring. Dragon observed the boy in front of him, crossing his arms with a gaze as sharp as his blade. Do you know why you are here, Genin Uzumaki? Sparrow Sensei has told me it is because it is time for my lessons with you. And she would be right. But first, introductions. Do you know who my squad are? Naruto Uzumaki. The boy shook his head, Dragon sighing as he sat back against his own chair, wiping the blood from his blade. While I was promoted for my skills a long time ago, we were all known as the Education Squad. We take traitors, treasonous people who we feel can be re-educated, prisoners of war too important to trade or kill, innocents that we need sleeper agents installed in, and lately, experiments of the snake Sanine. Our first patient in that regard was Anko Mitarashi. Sparrow was quite fond of her screams and teaching her to not dwell upon her mark. So much so that she still visits her from time to time, and let me tell you, you have not seen the worst Sparrow can do. We were asked to take it easy on you, Uzumaki, an order I do not agree with. The boy barely had time to bite back a scream as the man withdrew a kunai, pinning the boy's hand to the table, taking an odd fascination in how the wound closed up around it. You may not have been the traitor Mizuki, but your actions that night led to the death of good men. Good men, one of which was Sparrow's own fiancée. We are broken men, Bear, Sparrow, Hawk, and I, and you hurt one of us. So understand, as long as you are our plaything, we will make sure each lesson is learnt through blood got that traitor. He wanted to bite back, to shout that he was as loyal as they came, but the twisting of the blade in his hand turned his words to a bit-back cry of pain, nodding in acceptance. It was easier when he did that anyway. Good. Now, despite my unfathomable disgust and hatred for you, my deal with Lord Third relies on me teaching you how to harness the powers you have. Bear has taught you how to tap into your rage. Sparrow, your healing. I will be teaching you about weapons and the usage of them. Understand? Naruto nodded, barely showing a wince as the blade was removed and the hole in his hand knitted itself back together. With a snap of his fingers, the walls opened up to reveal Umbu, but different. White masks, each with a single symbol on them, waking in with cloth-covered bundles. A small SBRK of excitement grew in Naruto's heart at seeing them, before Dragon motioned for him to stand. He did. When standing there in silence did nothing for him, Naruto blinked. Are you waiting for me to do something, Dragon Sensei? Silence was his answer. Dragon just stood and gripped Naruto by his shoulder, throwing him into the middle of the room where the other Umbus circled him. In this room, I am not your sensei. Got that, traitor? You have earned the right to call me such. Unveil your arms, brothers. The fluttering of cloth revealed the items in each of the Umbu's grasp, and Naruto felt sick. Weapons, battered, warped, used, each one coated in dried blood and flesh, brain matter, and more. These are the arms of the fallen leaves, where roots collect and remember their strength in defense of our great tree. You, have harmed that tree, traitor. You are vile, scum, and I will break and remold you myself, or see your corpse amongst the unmarked graves of great Konoha. The now revealed zealot of a man walked into the center of the circle where Naruto stood, showing no mercy as he delivered a harsh blow to the boy's stomach, bending him over the man's fist before driving him into the ground with a mighty blow to the back of his head. We are broken men. These are not normal Umbu. The blonde looked up shakily, rolling out of the way as he reached out to one of the Umbu and grasped the handle of the weapon he found. Weight laid in his palm as he felt the weapon drag him down, looking back to see the head of a large hammer cracked on the stone. Mask number 00562, mask name Alligator. My friend died in action against IWA, missing mean for your freedom and your safety. Dragon did not hold back, rushing towards Naruto and unleashing a flurry of blows upon him. Where knuckle could not hit, knee or elbow did in its place. The blonde could feel each blow regenerating, but it was not enough. The pain was too immense. He swung the weapon, only to have it knocked from his hand as the weight knocked him off balance, a leg sweep taking him off his feet, and a downwards kick driving him into the concrete. Ribs pushing themselves out of his lungs as he coughed up precious lifeblood. You are unworthy of his might. The harsh kick he received sent him skidding across the concrete towards another Umbu. Naruto reached up again, driven to defend himself as he grasped another handle, this one belonging to a club covered in spikes, the Kanabo feeling awkward as he used its dented form to stand. Mask number 13790, mask name Rhino, died in action, pushing a fellow operative out of the way of a rock slide in Kyumo, defending his comrades. This time Naruto swung. He did so with all his body, but Dragon was too fast, ducking under his strike and landing a jaw-splitting uppercut on the boy's chin, cracking bone and shattering teeth before grabbing the weapon and tossing it back to the Umbu in question. Naruto noticed the circle shrunk, the Umbu stepping out of its circumference as Dragon hoisted him to his feet with a hand around his throat. You share none of his kindness. Another blow to the stomach, and this one Naruto could not hide as he coughed up blood across the hand of the man who held him to the spot he stood in, and another, and another, and another, his pain tolerance meaning nothing to the raw disgust and hate in every blow inflicted upon him, tossed aside once again, crawling as best he could to the next Umbu, looking up at a red katana, its blade shattered halfway. The item, familiar. Mask number 00999. Mask name, Fox. Died, defending our home from the Kyuubi attack, speared through the stomach by the claw of the beast. He was not even allowed to reach for this one. Dragon's heel crushing his hand to the floor. Defending the Kyuubi Jinchuriki at the time of the sealing. You show none of her devotion to those you love. Slowly the man stepped away, grabbing the handle of the blade and stroking it with an admiration. Naruto had never felt so low. Somehow, this hurt far more than what Sparrow had done to him. While he could regenerate flesh and bone, this was a truth. The pain of the lives he had cost, shown to him and reinforced by the memory of true loyalty he had spat on. Dragon did not even turn to him as the boy lifted himself to his knees, Instead, he moved to the next umbu, gripping the handle of a broken Fuma shuriken. Mask name, Falcon, died in pursuit of the snake Sannin on our border when he jumped onto an explosive tag. Next, he grasped the bracer of a set of claws, their blades warped and bent. Mask name, Badger, missing in action after a cave in within our mines to the south. Naruto watched as the man went from weapon to weapon, blade, dagger, bow, even a musket, all showing damage before the man came before a trikanai. Frayed cloth wrappings showing the remnants of a Fuin. Our Lord Fourth sacrificed himself to save the village by sealing the demon fox into a brat that would later squander his sacrifice by costing us the weapon of the Nine Tails and burdening us with a ticking time bomb of rage. He turned, uncaring as Naruto's cursed seal slowly spread around his body. The black veins flaring up as the binding roots marking gained its dark, inky color. You can get angry all you want, boy, but your actions cost us lives, cost people loved ones. A clan matriarch is in a coma because of you, her son wanting your head. You have made the fourth sacrifice just that little bit lesser, all because you refused to pay attention in the academy and wanted the fast way to our sacred role as the protectors of our village. You are not worthy of their memories or the honor held in upholding their strengths, kindnesses, might, and will. The third would see you forgiven. I would see you remember. Naruto slowly got to his feet, the signs of rage pouring off of him as Dragon gripped his blade to act should the boy strike at him. But when he lifted his head, the man stopped, the blade being sheathed as he nodded. I see you finally understand, traitor. You're not here to learn how to be a shinobi. You don't deserve that role. You lost that right when you betrayed your home. You are misshapen, raised in a way to see the role of shinobi as a child's dream. I will break you in that dream until I can find something to use amongst the rubble. Do you understand? Hi, I understand. The word came out hollow, broken, a cold and sick twisted feeling inside of himself guided at his own heart. He walked past, only to receive a harsh blow to the chest that knocked him back to the center of the circle. But he did not care. Traitors deserve such treatment. For the next hour, blows rained down upon the Uzumaki. With every broken bone, another name. Each shattered tooth, another mask. Dragon made sure to etch what he could not in the flesh, in his spirit. Every weapon the boy grasped, he knocked aside and made the boy pay in blood for touching. Every attempt to fight back was met not with congratulations or praise, but harsher blows and mightier strikes. And Naruto took it all, until with what luck he had, his curse mark at full blast, he grasped a handle through bloodied vision and swung. And the weapon was caught. Drip, drip, drip. All in attendance watched the blood drop from Dragon's hand. This time, the blood being his own rather than what he had drawn from the boy. In the shaking hands of the blonde sat a crumbling wooden handle, splintered and split at the bottom. On it, sitting the violently warped and dented metal of a strange blade, one Naruto thought to only belong to farmers and lumberjacks. Dragon wrenched the axe from his grip, looking at it as he withdrew the blade from the small cut it had made in his palm. Mask number 4017 for mask name Lion. Died in battle against Hanzo the Salamander while stalling for the arrival of the three legendary Sannin, never knowing his death would be for nothing. You must earn his faith. Naruto waited for the next blow to come, but it did not. Dragon stood there, observing the weapon in his hands before he looked to Naruto. This was the first weapon you swung with that you did not treat like a tool to be used, but as a weapon to extend your own body. Why? I don't know. It felt right. I didn't want to die here a traitor, even if I'm not sure you would have killed me. I know I got people killed. I just didn't know I knew until now. The disgust and anger I feel in my actions are too much, too heavy. I see all these weapons, and I think, A hand came up to halt the boy, seeing he was on the verge of tears. Dragon looked at him, and even behind the mask, Naruto could feel the utter disdain for him. But I dash. I don't want to hear it, Uzumaki. You are a traitor to the leaf. You squandered so much, so many opportunities, and you treat every weapon here with disrespect because you aim to use them against me instead of attacking me yourself. The boy's eyes widened as he looked upon Dragon, only to receive a harsh slap, the back of the man's hand impacting his face, knocking him back into the circle of umbu around him. This was your first lesson, reminding you what you are and what you should have looked up to instead of fairy tale stories. We are soldiers of our village, and we serve the village first. And when punishment comes, you do not rely on those around you to save you when you yourself have the strength. Instead, you fight, and if you live, then you learn, and you strive for forgiveness in the eyes of your peers and hope that you earn it. The boy could not even nod. Fatigue at the damage he had taken and the energy needed to recover from it ran his body ragged. Dragon did not attempt to grab the boy as exhaustion took him, bringing him to the floor. He instead waved the umbu away and sat upon his chair once more, looking at the table and then back to his hand. You know Lord Third would have your head for this commander. He did not turn to Sparrow, his breathing mellow as he slowly turned his gaze to the unconscious Uzumaki. The third is too soft on the boy. If it were Lord Danzo, the 9 tails would have been extracted by now and in a new host. As it is, I want to make the boy see the consequences of what he has done and walk out of here reforged from the scrap that the Academy spat out. Maybe something would come from this. Maybe. But next time, do not swap the stories of our pains. I don't want the boy thinking less of any of the fallen for loving me. Dragon released a heavy sigh, reaching into his shirt and pulling out a necklace of 2 rings, one gold, the other bent and cracked. A hateful gaze set on the boy. Take him back to his room and see about getting him some reading material on weapons. He learned quick, and I want my punching bag to be able to fight back by day 10-inch. Sparrow simply nodded, picking up the bloodied mess of a boy before leaving the room, giving only a moment before looking back with a set of final words. Just remember, Commander, even the roots of the tree can strangle the trunk when twisted by nature. Please do not be that root, thwack. Blood and spittle flew clear from their owner, blonde hair matted in sweat and blood over scarlet eyes as their owner ducked to the left. Crack! Only to be sent to the ground as a second blow struck him clear across the cheek, the slow cracking of a jaw pulling itself into place coming afterwards. Just as he shot up to his feet, ready to strike back, the blonde was stopped by an outstretched hand, a sigh following as the boy stood up with the assistance offered to him. That's time, Narabrat. Sorry, but you failed this time as well. The younger, aloof voice that came from under the mask of the man in front of him was probably the only one he could trust to not stab him the moment he turned away. It was for this reason that the boy sighed, a petty sigh, staring at the man with a deadpan expression. It's not my fault the great and mighty Hawk doesn't know how to hold back. I mean, none of you do, but still. I am 15. I can't keep up with you yet. The man just barked a bout of laughter at the boy before patting him on the back. Too hard, smirking under his mask. The operative said nothing in response, however, as he dragged the bruised, albeit healing, and battered blonde out of the sparring ring they stood in. While Naruto stood in bloodied hemp pants with bandages around his hands and feet, Hawk stood as ever in classic Umbu armor, actually showing off the dark blue hair running down his back and pale skin. Kid, it's only been 12 days. The fact you've managed to learn to dodge an Umbu at mild hand-to-hand combat at all is amazing. Stop putting your accomplishments down. I know for a fact that that's the commander talking, not you. Naruto halted and lifting his water bottle to his lips, his eyes darkening with the memory that had occurred earlier that week. The bags under his eyes had not shrunk any, only grown with the efforts of Sparrow and Dragon. Bear still not having returned from his mission to God knows where at this rate. Hawk's sigh drew his attention, the man shaking his masked head. Look, kid, if you're going to start brooding, I'm handing you off to Sparrow for pain training early. So you fucked up, we all do. Dragon was out of line in my opinion. I mean, you're just a kid. Naruto just scoffed, taking a swig of his drink with a frown. A kid that got people killed and my friend's mother hospitalized. Dragon was right. So why are you trying to undermine him? Hawk's stare through his mask really lived up to his title. Naruto feeling a little uneasy under it before the Umbu slugged him in the shoulder. Ow! What was that for? For being a dumbass kid. Dragon is... He's old school. He thinks that you kids should be trained up like they did in the war. He doesn't know how to shut off and see you for what you are. A weapon. The boy's response dragged a deep exhale out of Hawk and a slow nod. I can't say you're wrong there, kid, but I'll tell you now, if you start seeing yourself as just a weapon, then I truly can't teach you anything. When Naruto didn't reply, Hawk just let out a loud groan and leaned back, staring at the boy. In 12 days, he had really changed. Extensive use of the curse mark had rendered his binding root seal as black as the ink when he first applied it. The infected, cursed blood running under the scars helped give it that tribal tattoo color, but that was not the only change. Extensive workouts and being beaten to near death, as well as being forced to heal every part of his body over the space of several hours, multiple times a day, had helped render any malnutrition or otherwise completely absent. Instead, with the help of the Umbu nutrient bars and Kyubi chakra burning away his calories, the boy had managed to speed his way to owning quite the figure indeed. The fact his body had adapted to channeling a constant 20 to 80 ratio of nature chakra to his Kyubi chakra through his body definitely did not hurt. But that was where the positive changes ended. Scars had started to appear on the boy. Small at first, but they grew in number, never around the places he regrew thanks to Sparrow's pain training, but on his chest, his arms mainly. They showed his reluctance to heal, the man having to literally force the boy to regenerate when brought to him for their sparring sessions. Dragon had truly been too harsh on the boy. If it was not Dragon bringing the boy to him a bloody, beaten, slashed, and crushed mess. It was Sparrow bringing the boy to him in literal pieces and having to wait for the boy to reattach or regenerate past his wounds. Has Dragon told you why we're training you yet, Narrowbrat? The blonde shook his head, taking another drink of water as he spat out a loose tooth to the floor. If he did, it was probably between showing me more weapons of fallen Ambu and reminding me that I should be in a cell or dead. But it's something about my cursed seal making me a threat, right? The response drew a clenched fist from Hawk, the man nodding, before shaking his head again with a light chuckle. Not exactly. I asked if he told you why we are the ones teaching you. That caused Naruto to pause. He shook his head, looking up at the man next to him as he stood and walked away from the bench. I bet he did. Did he use the term, "We are all broken men"? At the widening of Naruto's eyes, Hawk just laughed and nodded, hopping up onto a rope that suspended from the ceiling, looping his leg around it and turning upside down. Well, he's right. Each one of us should be dead, imprisoned, locked up in a psyche ward, or worse now, it's not my place to tell you the other story. And trust me, they will make you pay if you try to pry it from them. But let me tell you a story. Naruto blinked before pulling up a nutrient bar from his pack, eyes locked on the man as he hung, slowly watching the man play with the end of the rope. There were once 5 warriors, each a beast of the forest they lived in, under the command of a mighty ape. Lizard, bear, sparrow, hawk, and weasel. Each specialized in their own forms of warfare, the secret hand of the fire of the forest, laying waste to any threats to its grand tree. While Sparrow and Lizard were away, and the bear and weasel went out to play, Hawk was left alone in the nest awaiting the day when he would be called upon to once again draw his blade and step into the sun surrounding his forest to protect all the little forest creatures he loved so dearly. See, he was jealous of Lizard, who removed the termites from the shadow of the roots of the tree, and Sparrow, who helped with her song to tweet the disobedient critters to her tune. He saw the bear as a rival, swift speed and precision against brute strength and widespread destruction. But the weasel, Naruto, flinched when the man crushed the rope in his grip, the dust of its fibers falling. Hawk saw the weasel as a friend. The two would play together in the daylight and hunt together in the moonlight. Whether rain or snow, sun or storm, the two would hunt and play together in defense of the great tree. Of the 5, it was the weasel that Hawk saw the most in life. But he felt jealousy for the weasel, for he was prince, while the hawk was but a peasant, his friend always having to attend the Rat King's meetings. Hawk was sad. He missed his friends, so he went out one day on a walk to try and find them. And in doing so, he discovered a great plot of mice and rats rising up to try and eat the tree's fruit for themselves. Hawk could not let that be, so he got ready to tweet a song of his own until Lizard came forth. But Lizard was not who Hawk remembered him to be. Naruto's eyes shifted to concern as they watched Hawk's shoulders begin to shake, the rope being crushed in his hand as he looked up at the boy paling as he now saw the familiar sight of empty sockets behind the mask. Besides Lizard was the Scorpion King, a man who in his pincers held Lizard's tongue and whose sting lay in Lizard's back. Hawk was confused until Lizard struck, freezing Hawk to the place he stood, where the Scorpion stole his song before Hawk could stop him. Hawk fought back, but the Scorpion had employed a hornet, whose deadly sting had spelt death for the bird. In a panic, he ran, leaving Lizard behind, and he ran, and he ran, until he met Weasel where the land met only water and air. To Weasel he asked a promise to use his song for good. As he bestowed upon Weasel the last of his song to give, and then Hawk took a dive off a very tall cliff. The implications of the story were not something to be mistaken. Naruto's eyes wide and body shaking at what he heard as Hawk dropped from the rope and walked over to him, looking at him with those empty eyes. Hawk was supposed to die, but Sparrow found the hawk and nursed it back to health. When Hawk was able to fly again, he found his neck of the woods in ash and ruin, and all the nice mice and nice rats burned with the evil ones. The scorpion had sung its own song and driven Weasel to burn down his home. Hawk wanted to kill the scorpion, to peck out its eyes, but Sparrow said no. The old monkey managed to return Lizard to them, but the lizard had shed its scales and gained a new flame, its fire blazing, to a point where it was more monster than beast. While Lizard still lives inside, the dragon it had become, well, Hawk misses the lizard. And poor Sparrow, too heartbroken by the loss of her love and her friend, had lost her song. Instead, only able to tweet others to her tune through the sharpness of her beak, and poor bear, not to be seen, thought to be a coward who ran from danger despite the fact he had been defending his cubs from a monster of the sea. Each of the great beasts were betrayed, one angry, one without song, one twisted, one sharpened, and one feeling like he did not belong in the forest any longer. Hawk wishes of a day when he might see his friends again. Sparrow helped teach him a new song, one where the hawk's inner flame could help light the way. But those days are gone now, little fox. The Umbu tilted his head in a smile as those empty sockets closed, his sandals hitting the ground first before he groaned, stretching his back out slowly. Maybe one day I'll see my Weasel again. But for now I need to use my fire to see, and I can see just fine that you've healed up. Come on, we have an hour left before your session with Sparrow, and I want to feel you finally land a punch on me before that hour is up. If you do, I'll tell her no eyeball stuff today. Naruto shuddered, nodding before he stood and dashed towards Hawk, curse mark extending across his body as his speed doubled and his fists began cracking at the air around him. Yeah, that's IT, come on. SM. Outside the training hall, Sparrow stood with her hand against the door, shoulders shaking slightly with tears running down her cheeks. The green eyes under her mask, bloodshot as she turned away and began walking. Stupid Hawk. Of course he forgot to turn the clocks back. The boy was late for his latest lesion with her. As she walked down the hallway, she stepped past a door with a symbol for dragon scratched into its surface, her eyes gazing over to the one opposite. Weasel. Stupid Hawk. Making old wounds ache. She hurried on past the door in question with little care for how the past hurt, her hand pulling a set of scissors from the depths of her pocket. As she went into the room, she was to wait for Naruto in, absently snipping at whatever she could, the air, fabric, bandages, just snip, 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 tweet, tweet. Stupid Hawk. She slowed down her snipping, one by one, until she had stopped completely. Her eyes focused on the blades. The mask was on, only Sparrow. The mask was on, only Sparrow. The mask was on, only Sparrow. The mask, the tears hitting the scissors were small. No cries were given, but they were real all the same. As she lifted up her hand to her mask and pushed it against her face, her teeth closed down around her bottom lip, crimson slowly dripping as the tears began to stop. The mask was on, only Sparrow, and her song was all the tweet she needed. The knocking of the door behind her drew her attention, slowly turning as she licked up what was left of the blood under her mask, her eyes coming to rest on the blonde's own panting, tired, nervous but proud expression. He held out a piece of paper, bending over to take a breath as she took the slip and read it, unable to stop the small smile underneath at the basic umbu code that she and Hawk had perfected. The brat only went and did it. Go easy on the eyes today. Teeth are all free game. The brat owes me 1 or 2. Anything Sparrow could have said was silenced as Naruto willingly sat down in the chair. Usually she had to coerce him or force him, but this time, she watched as he strapped his first hand in, the pride and excitement gone, and instead replaced with dread, but even more acceptance. As she walked forward and took the other hand, placing it down to strap it in two, her eyes flicked to him under her mask. You have decided to give in, Uzumaki. He nodded, taking a shaking breath inwards as he looked at her with eyes that made her falter. I know this is for my own good. As a traitor, I deserve it. As a weapon, I need to learn it. Just trailing off, Naruto looked away with a bite of his lip, a nervous one, his eyes screwing up in preparation, like a child about to get their immunity jabs. It nearly drew a smile from Sparrow as she stepped up and around to face him, cupping his cheek. Yes, Uzumaki. His blue eyes looked up at her, and she wished they hadn't. The mask was on, but where was Sparrow? Her own green eyes widened as he managed to snag her hand in his, holding it so tightly. She looked down at it, then back to the owner, who now looked away with a saddened gaze, a frightened one. Please. She had not the heart to tell him no. Stupid Hawk, getting her heart all feeling. Sparrow was the one supposed to do this, not her. With a sigh, she squeezed his hand and took out a scalpel. Ok Uzumaki, today we will be practicing your tolerance with internal injuries. SM. Hawk humped himself as he walked down the hallways of the education squad's home away from home. The kid's screams were already filling up the hallways, leading him to sigh as he kept walking. That is until he felt a presence come into the range of his sensing, smiling to himself as he just kept walking. Walking, walking, walk. Slam. OF my dragon. Is someone a bit touchy today? What's the matter? Scales itching. Closed eyes stared down into the mask of their commander as the arm of said man pushed against their throat, the dented metal door to the men's lavatories against Hawk's back. You had no right, Hawk, and oh right. That traitor doesn't deserve our tale. A flicker, and Hawk stood behind Dragon with a sigh, dusting himself off with a smile as he began walking, flickering again to avoid yet another tackle. Perhaps, but I wanted him to know mine. To know that traitors are more than welcome in our little group, Lizard. The growl of the man behind him was the only warning Hawk got, ducking just in time to avoid a blade that would have removed his head from his shoulders. Why, I would have thought you were actually trying to hurt me there if I couldn't sense your chakra. Is there a reason you're going too slow for me to really get hurt? Or is the dragon getting a bit rusty hanging around the roots of the tree? This time the attack was much faster, Hawk's steel arm plate stopping the blade in its tracks. Dragon did not stop, however, striking out with a foot that clipped the man in the side. But Hawk only laughed, skidding back against the floor. Touch a nerve did I draggy. The commander stared for a moment, slowly putting his blade back in its sheath with a dark glare leveled towards his subordinate. Oh, scary. Oh, can it sure sway dash? This time it was Dragon's turn to be pinned up to the wall. A knife-edged hand against his throat, and another wreathed in flame at the side of his head. Aw, talk now. Repeat after me. Ha-avaka. You took away my name when you became Dragon, remember? When you took away my brother from me. You do not get to call me that anymore. Ugh. Dragon stared down at the empty sockets staring into his own, before turning his head to the side with a scoff. When Hawk let him down, it was with a pat of the shoulders and a smile. Good boy. I'd hate to show Hiruzen why he was wrong to appoint you leader again. I mean, you're already compromised, and I haven't quite yet forgiven you for Weasel, so I'm going to place down a ground rule with you. Okay, dear. Dragon said nothing as he looked at Hawk, sure sway Uchiha, now with a bead of sweat dripping down his neck. You took everything from me, and you made Weasel take everything else from himself, and I am not going to let you perform a hat trick with the little fox, okay? So take that scorpion's thoughts out of your head before I have to show you once again how I trim the dying roots of a tree. Ugh. All playfulness left the body of Hawk after that, and Dragon could have sworn he saw the faded image of something demonic over the man. Or perhaps you need to remember that the traitor here was once you. And just like that boy, you were coerced by the voice of a man you were foolish enough to trust. The only difference being that one of you isn't resilient enough to survive burning alive should a certain phoenix decide the ashes of his home are getting a bit too toasty. Hawk said no more after that, leaving a scorch mark in his wake as a whirlwind of flame marked his exit, leaving Dragon behind in an empty hallway with nothing but his regrets and his pains to focus on. Instead, he walked towards the sounds of screaming, and upon arriving, managed to catch the sight of the boy he hated so, chest peeled open, ribs exposed, and with a bloodied Sparrow holding his heart in one hand and his hand in the other, eyes narrowing in disgust as Sparrow soothed the boy's cries with words, watching the heart regenerate. No mercy for traitors to the leaf. Even its so-called immortals read the disclaimer. To say that Naruto was tired could be considered the understatement of the century. It was day 23 into the long month he had spent in the care of the education squad. Bear had returned on the 18th, and for 5 days straight now, the man had been drilling Naruto into the ground, and the walls, and the ceiling. He was just brutalizing the boy for any mistakes he made. Used to seal too early? Bind him and let him struggle to get up while dodging kicks and punches that could shatter bone. Used it too late? Not even be given the chance and get pulverized into a broken bag of bones by the giant of a man's harsh attacks. Not to say it was all bad. The harsh treatment had been serving double time for helping Sparrow in his pain endurance training, earning him a few sessions free of the sadist touch. While he may have lessened his negative feelings to her thanks to Hawk, he did not enjoy the act of regrowing organs as she removed them like some kind of pop quiz. Speaking of Hawk, he hadn't seen the man since Bear came back. He missed Hawk. He was the only man who saw fit to try and actually make the boy feel like a human instead of test subject, a failure, or a traitor. Oh yes, then there was him, Dragon. The man had started taking a sick pleasure out of torturing the boy, breaking him down in front of those faceless, masked bastards, making sure the boy knew he was worthless, spineless, that the deaths were on his hands, and he was tired of it. Dragon had started going even rougher in his beatings to the boy lately, going as far as to use the weapons he showed to the boy while activating his seal. Sparrow did nothing to help. Bear turned away from it, and Hawk was gone. Between Bear's training to control his power and Dragon's attempts to make the boy break, the attempts Naruto made to improve himself were only getting harder and harder to pull off. As he sat in his room, which had been cleaned once again of the blood that covered it, the boy lifted his hand up to his vision and watched the black markings of his cursed seal cover it with ease. While he was still a far cry from being able to land hit on Bear or walk away from one of Dragon's lessons without being near the brink of death, he most certainly had made progress. Progress that came with a cost, however. His eyes went to the other hand, or lack thereof, sighing as he looked up at Sparrow with a dead gaze, blood pouring out of the stump that ended just below his bicep. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were enjoying this, Sparrow Sensei. The woman just shrugged. It had become a bit of a game to the two. Well, game to her, annoying game to him to try and avoid her when she fell cutty. With an application of his inner chakras, the bone that sprouted from his arm was soon followed by strands of intertwining muscle, followed after that by more bone and more muscle. The arm rebuilding itself in seconds as crimson flame coated the limb before it lay fully recovered, fingers flexing. You did not even show a reaction to it this time, Uzumaki. Are you trying to put up a mask? Or have our lessons finally started to pay off? The blonde just stared at her for a few moments, one-eye twitching. She does know I haven't physically reacted to her doing this since day 19, right? Not giving Sparrow an answer, Naruto instead chose to stand up and stretch, dodging out of the way as she tried to slide another scalpel between his ribs. I see. So it does still hurt. Well, I will schedule you in for another dash. She was stopped in her speech by him, turning to her with rolled eyes, taking the scalpel and flicking it to the side, despite the stare of Emerald behind Sparrow's mask. It will always hurt, Sparrow-sensei. I'm just used to it now. Would I prefer to not feel it? Yes. Do I know I can handle it if I do? Also, yes. You've cut, sliced, carved, removed every part of me you could see if it will either kill or break me, and other than that one time, nothing has done it. I don't see what else you can come to gain from slicing me, sensei. So please, could we just stop? The woman stared at him, head tilted to the side like some kind of curious puppy at first, before she leaned in with those green eyes showing some form of interest in his reaction. As he tried to back up, she did not let him, instead guiding him much like a sheepdog back onto the bed as she crawled over him, a position most men would envy, if not for the fact that Songbird had used this same position many times to work on him intimately. His lungs still didn't forgive him for falling for that trap. Interesting. The words sounded so wrong coming from her. You've begged, cried, screamed, but never just straight. Asked for me to stop my lessons. Tell me, Uzumaki, what is pain to you? She had asked him this question before. Day 3, a passing comment he barely understood due to the act of her removing his fingers. But now it felt like passing conversation to the boy. It is a tool that reminds me I am alive. A reminder of what blows I cannot dodge and therefore must mitigate. And if I cannot, then fuel for my rage to empower my body. Sparrow stared into his blue eyes as her own lost their glimmer, their light, and then let out a sigh as she slowly pulled herself away from the boy and stared at him with a look of mild indifference. Then I have nothing left to teach you. Come tomorrow, I shall go back to my post in the interrogation department, and you will never see me again unless you commit treason to the great tree a second time. I'm sure that brings you great relief, Genin Uzumaki. He couldn't really help the nod. He was glad to know that her sick games of doctor had come to an end. But he could not but feel oddly disturbed by how easily she had backed off. He did not get a chance to inquire as to why, though, as 4 loud thumps against his door could be heard before Bear opened it, standing next to Hawk Sensei. The bird-themed male walked in ahead of his giant friend, laughing a little too much as he walked over to Naruto and clamped a hand down on their arm, lifting them up into a hug that was weighted tight. As Sensei ribs can't breathe, but the man just hugged tighter, even as Bear came up to stand next to them with a sigh under his breath, before bringing his fist down atop Hawk's head. He sent both man and student crumbling to the ground, scoffing a small weak under his breath before turning to Sparrow. He noticed her body language immediately, raising an eyebrow at it. He's already done? A nod was his answer. Genin Uzumaki is now capable of subconsciously channeling an equal mixture of cursed seal chakra and tailed beast chakra to his injuries, resulting in a regeneration time of 1 to 2 seconds depending on the severity of the wound, 5 seconds maximum for regrowing lost limbs, anywhere between for organs. When the curse mark is active, these times are reduced to an instantaneous amount at the cost of some form of sanity. The bare-masked operative scoffed, looking to the boy with his arms crossed in front of him. Good thing it's my job then. Brat. The boy looked up from where he had to push Hawk off of him, groaning at the weight as he looked up at the hulking beast of a man. Meet me in the training hall in 5. I got a surprise for you. Now, when Bear said he had a surprise, 9 times out of 10 he meant, I have a new way to crush your bones. But this time, something in the hesitance in his words said otherwise. The chuckle coming from the half-conscious Hawk was the only encouragement he had to this thought process. Still, Naruto stood. He did not thank or look at Sparrow because, truth be told, he still hated the bitch. Hawk would no doubt follow, and as for the missing 4th, Naruto could have given less than 2 fucks where he was. SM. When Naruto did arrive in the training hall, as it was called between the education squad and him, his eyes widened at what he saw. Dragon, Bear, and somehow Hawk had all gotten ahead of him and were standing around a wooden footlocker and a much larger wooden box. Dragon's body language spoke of being pissed, Bear's as nervous, and Hawk. Satisfied? About time you got here, shrimp. Come on over here before I have to pull you by your ear. Knowing Hawk would definitely play on this threat, he wasted no time approaching the 3 of his remaining sensei. What? He may be pseudo-immortal, that shit hurt. When he approached, he watched as Hawk turned his gaze to Dragon and watched him expectantly. And was he humming? There was this low buzz coming from the man, and Dragon stood still and still and still before sighing as he looked towards Naruto. Traitor, I'll still on that old shit train again. You did well in surviving Sparrow's pain endurance training with your mind intact, and with 8 days left to spare. Now we know your clothing won't be cut to ribbons at any time. Hawk here has something he would like to give you. Something he picked up on his latest mission outside of Konoha. The implications that the old man had sent a blind shinobi out into the field was strange enough, but the fact Dragon was complimenting him? The three had to watch as the boy took his thumb and snapped it backwards. He stared at the three of them in return, the appendage popping back into place with little difficulty as Dragon could be seen twitching. Told you he'd think it was a Genjutsu, Draggy-chan. It took all the man had not to break professionalism and attack the idiot, and the memory of what had happened to him the last time he pushed the ex-Uchiha too far. Do not confuse my appraisal for approval, Genin Uzumaki. As far as I am concerned, you are still our prisoner for the next 8 days. It is only Hawk's mercy that your assigned time with him is instead being used on this mockery of a celebration instead. He tried to ignore the other two staring at him, looking down at the boy with his best look of disgust and hate that a mask could create, only for Hawk to lean down and whisper in the boy's ear. Loudly, too loudly. That's his way of saying congrats, and he's going to miss you. Naruto just smiled, thankful of Hawk's support of him. Even Bear's shoulders seemed to be shaking, while Dragon gave a glare to Hawk that he was sure could kill with the right Dijitsu. He leant down, and with a little application of Curse Chakra, snapped the metal locks on the footlocker clean off of it while the lid was flung aside. Sitting on a bed of straw sat furs. Those are clothes made from pelts and parts one skinned off of some summons a missing Nin decided to throw at me while I was tracking down my target on the border to iron. In return for accepting half pay, which the third was not happy at me for, I managed to get the nearby Sarai living on the border to take the furs and turn them into clothes for you. They're lined with thermal seals, self-repairing seals. With your ambient chakra disposal from the curse seal, you shouldn't have to worry about them ever running out of juice. Go ahead and try them on. Words could not explain how happy Naruto was to finally receive some actual clothes. Pulling out the items of clothing from the box, he was less happy to see the animal skinned for the pelts were. Yeah, wolves and elk are kind of the only animal you can find up there. I have it on good word that the Inuzuka and Nara clans hold no ill will for wearing such clothing, though, as long as you don't hunt down their animals for the materials. Naruto did not believe that for a second, but clothing was clothing, and he was tired of the cloth pants and shirt they kept washing and giving him to wear. The clothing was easy enough to slip on, really. The bracers tied on easily, each one possessing large wolf fangs over his knuckles as well as gray fur tufts under the brown leather going up his arm. The greaves going on just as easily, with rope tying them in a place akin to laces on a boot. The greaves going over a set of dark gray cloth pants with black leather straps and metal plating over the knees, shins, and even a belt fashioned in the same way as his bracers, with a buckle resembling a snarling wolf's maw fashioned from hammered steel. Coming up over his chest was a vest of the same leather, with the gray fur on the outside this time, lining the arms and neck of the vest with a deep V going down his chest, showing off the binding roots tattoo on his chest and his arms, with only a pair of leather straps going across his chest to connect to a pair of leather shoulder pauldrons, the leaf's symbol engraved in them, and more wolves for lining the edges. The final touch, Naruto noticed, was a wolf's pelt mantle. Head included, the shoulders and head of the beast had been removed entirely, sewn off expertly with the lower jaw missing and leather cords in place for him to tie it around his frame, covering him entirely with the upper part of the wolf's head, again, fangs included, actually forming a strange hood. He looked into the mirror provided by Hawk from somewhere, and he had to admit he looked good. With the tree-like seal, the furs, his whisker marks, and feral appearance with his scars, he looked as if he could pass as one of the barbarians in the Princess Gale movie he had seen last winter. He looks like a twit. Bear's eyes rolled as both Naruto and Hawk ended up in the corner of the room, drawing little circles in the floor with their fingers. Before Hawk produced his classic finger in the air, bad idea pose. Kid, activate your seal. They'll see how cool you'll look. Not one to let an opportunity to show off slip by him. Naruto exhaled slowly before letting the black marks of his tainted chakra coat him entirely. And in the mirror, caught how his exposed chest and arms showed off how the marks grew from the binding root seal like branches of the tree, only adding to his tribalistic look. Eh, eh, come on, Bear. You have to admit that looks cool. The man stared from behind his mask, unyielding with crossed arms. 1 second passed. 2 seconds passed. 3. He looks like an intimidating twit. While Naruto's confidence deflated, Hawk, as positive as always, simply held a thumbs out to the boy. Naruto, however, was focusing on Dragon, whose gaze was heavy and cold. He looks like a commonplace bandit. What were you thinking, Hawk? Well, Draggy, I was thinking that the boy needed style. Your little request for Sparrow to torture the poor boy Dash. Naruto's eyes shot to Dragon at that with a wide gaze before narrowing into a hateful one. So all of that was his idea, huh? And your little remote control pain seal on his body, you had me so willingly apply to the boy, along with Bear's training to have him fight like a savage. Well, it all already had the boy looking like that. I just decided to turn it into his brand. Think about it. Naruto Uzumaki, Konoha's savage fish cake. Wait, that's not right. Bear just watched alongside Dragon as Hawk leant down on Naruto's head, ignoring the raging blonde's attempts to strangle him while muttering up fish cake-related puns. Commander, the dragon-masked man said nothing, staring at the two with hate in his eyes. Commander, what is it, Bear? The window. The man looked up, only to stiffen as he looked upon both a set of white robes with a rin trim and bandages upon a black-robed figure. The two most powerful men in Konoha, staring down at him. Not Naruto. Not Hawk. Not Bear. Him. The stare said it all, one of judgment and one of contemplation, but both saying the same thing. We know. His attention was pulled away by Hawk guiding the fur-clad blonde over to the other box, once again watching as the blonde pulled on his curse-marked chakra and opened it by ripping wood from. Dragon's heart stood still. In the box, standing as tall as the blonde, a familiar-looking axe lay. Its once warped metal straightened, repaired, and reinforced. The wooden handle replaced by metal and wrappings of shark skin, but it was that axe all the same. The lions that once sat on it, replaced by wolves and foxes, a snarling maw on both sides of the blade. He gazed upon Hawk with such a blazing hatred that the man looked at him with what he knew had to be a smirk, somehow knowing even without his sight. Like a draggy? I found it in an old storage closet and decided it could be put to better use in the hands of Konoha's newest warrior. His voice spoke of playfulness, but his body, the way his head was tilted towards the two he feared, hell, standing right in the perfect spot for him to have all three of them in his line of sight. He could do nothing, and Hawk knew that perfectly.